You can also view tonight's meeting on YouTube. We will begin our meeting with the prayer from Councilor Pisner.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of our community. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Sheila, roll call, please.
Councilor Pisner?
Here.
Councilor Santinella?
Here.
Councilor Ungary?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sakala?
Here.
Mayor Crisati?
Here.
Councilor Despard?
Here.
Councilor Finger?
Here.
Councilor Hopkins?
Here.
Councilor Ludwig?
Here.
Councilor Mangini? Here. That's 10 members present, none absent.
Okay, next fire evacuation announcement. In the event of a fire, there are exits in the back of the chambers, and to my left in the audience's right, exit through the doors and go downstairs and into the parking lot. Next, minutes of preceding meetings that we've had. First, the regular meeting, July 5th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
Councilor Pisner.
Second.
And a second, Councilor Despard. Any changes? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And abstentions? We have motion carries 10-0. Next special meeting, July 5th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the special meeting that we had for the July 5th, 2022 meeting? Is there a motion to approve these? Councilor Finger and a second, Councilor Despard. Any deletions or changes to the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Opposed and abstentions? Okay, 10-0. Motion carries. Next special meeting, July 20th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the special meeting from July 20th, 2022?
Motion to approve.
Councilor Mangini and a second, Councilor Santinella. Does anybody have any changes or discussions? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed and abstentions? Okay, is that an abstention?
Yep.
Yes, okay. 9 in favor, 1 abstention. Motion carries. There are no special guests tonight. Next, public communications. There's a few things that I just want to mention regarding public communications. First of all, when you come on up, just please state your name and address for the record. Next, you'll have 5 minutes for the first round and 3 minutes for the second round. And we're asking you to please be respectful and refrain from any personalities that you might be mentioning in your comments. And remember, the town council feels very strongly what the public has to say and your right to be heard. However, I'm not going to be allowing comments at employees. As I am sure everyone can appreciate, there are multiple sides to any story, and I do reserve the right to end any public communication if there's a risk of liability or an exposure to the town based on comments or an infringement of an employee's right to due process. I wanted to just make that kind of clear with everybody, and everybody's been doing a real fine job with that, but I just wanted to state that for the record again tonight. Right now I'm opening for communications. Well, first, Mr. Young.
Good evening, George Young, 8 Holly Lane.
I was able to watch the July regular council meeting, which took about an hour to decide not to vote to follow the town attorney's recommendation, but to do an RFP for the appointment of someone to investigate or review, or whatever you want to call it, the operation of the assessor's office. Frankly, as I watched from home, it was a real sideshow. It now seems that there will not be a new or revised procedure in place by September for those that want to have their assessments reviewed. This is unfair to not only the taxpayers, but also the reviewers that may find that their methods of reviewing are also subject to change. Quite frankly, the issue of a preliminary meeting before the July council meeting should have taken place as suggested, and the dirty laundry aired out then. You would have been better prepared to vote without a public spectacle of your disagreement with each other. I know many councilors and others have questions to be addressed. I would like to know, when will the town become aggressive to get unregistered motor vehicles on our tax rolls? If they are not registered, the personal property tax reporting is still required. We have Enfield homeowners and renters with vehicles that are not registered here in Enfield or Connecticut. Let's go to another subject, such as vehicle assessments. I reviewed my assessment for my Buick and found it to be spot on. In January of 2022, I looked at the average retail book value, took 70%, and was within a few $100s of the October 1, 2021 assessment by the town. My car is not that old, so I'm sure the state had no trouble with the value. It was not adjusted for mileage or other add-ons, but unless you go to the VIN numbers, etc., it was a reasonable figure. It may be more difficult for older vehicles where the assessor is allowed to determine the value. Bring documentation to the meeting to lower this value. In reviewing the vehicle tax bill, I did not find a fire district tax this year. The brochure that came with my tax bill did not address that subject, nor was it mentioned in any of our last council meetings. The public should be informed as to why there was none, and yet my real estate tax bill did have it on there. In checking with other homeowners, I found out that other districts do have the fire district tax on their vehicle bill. I'm not a lawyer, but someone needs to tell me why, as a homeowner or business owner, we are paying the entire budget of the fire department and the renters are not paying anything for the fire district on their vehicles. I'm in District 4 in North Thompsonville Fire Department number 10. Is this not a discriminatory tax to the homeowners and the business property owners? Perhaps the town attorney could look into this and give us his opinion. By the way, thanks to the town council's reduction in our mill rate, the town tax portion of my real estate bill went down a little as compared to the prior year. But the fire district tax portion went up, indicating that as a homeowner, I am paying more than my fair share of the fire district tax, even with the revaluation. I know we cannot have a conversation about this now, but the homeowners deserve an immediate response tonight as to what happened, or that someone is going to get back to us to tell us that in 2023 there may not be a fire district tax bill is not all we want to hear tonight. The taxpayers in other fire districts should be concerned that they did not benefit in the same way. If the state is sending the amounts of the prior year vehicle tax to their fire district, will they get a reduction of their bill next year? As it stands now, the other districts will be getting the monies this year from the taxpayers in each district and also from the state. It is my understanding that the monies will be sent directly to the fire districts involved and will not go through the town. That can be confirmed by the finance director, and if true, the town will probably lose their 3% fee, which in Fire District 10 is about $5,000. If everyone in our district had benefited from the reduction, I believe the mill rate would have been $2.44 instead of $2.70. Find out what your district is doing. A consolidation of fire districts is justified. Note, I have subsequently spoken to the Fire Chief Earl Provencher, which has given me additional questions which need not be discussed tonight. I'm all set for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
If I push a button or something?
Yeah, there's a red button.
Can you hear me now? Okay. My name's Ken Brennan. I have a repair shop in town called Tire Country. I served for 10 years on a board of ed at the town of Ellington, my hometown. Thanks. I know how hard it is. So appreciate it. I'll try to be as quick as I can. I received a couple weeks ago in the mail a registered letter notifying me of a random personal property tax audit for my business in Enfield. I've been here 37 years. I probably have well over 100,000 customers served. I've paid my taxes the whole time. I find it odd that I came up with a random personal property tax audit. I know you can't answer my questions tonight, but hopefully maybe you'll get back to me with what policies and procedures you have for the word random, how that comes about. And if you have any policies and procedures, you might want to revisit them and figure out how to actually go through the proper process, because an outside of the town firm was hired to come look. I'm a little nervous also for retribution and everything else, but I started here in 1986, my senior year of college, because Alan Tracy and the Troianos took a risk on a kid who was broke to put him in business. They gave me a building. It was outfitted so I could run it with sweat equity because I had no nickels to rub together. And 37 years later, here I am. I think it's probably my turn to give back to some of the younger guys in town. So I want to address some of the things I see wrong with how this personal property tax audit is happening. The letter that came specifically asked for things that I don't think you should have the right to have. They wanted a trial balance sheet that expressly on my tax returns for my business of what I was spending my money on. What I spend my money on and the risks I take personally and financially with via insurance or who I borrow money from is none of the town's business. The town's business is, what do I have in town that's taxable? And do I pay my taxes on those things? They don't need my personal or my business tax returns for that. They also wanted a copy of my personal property insurance declaration page. Again, the risks I take to insure or not insure and how I pay for that has no effect on what property I have in Enfield that I need to pay my property tax on in Enfield. Earlier I said that I was given a building. I rented a building ready to go into business. This firm from Cheshire came in. They were wonderful ladies. They were very polite, very nice. They came in and they took pictures of things in my building. My building has been there for over 70 years. It was a gas station prior to me being there. It had tanks, it had pumps, it had lifts, it had machines and equipment with which to operate, all of which is still there. And now they're taking pictures of it, thinking it's my personal property. It was built into your assessor's valuation of the building because it was a gas station. So I don't have the results of it yet, but based on how the transactions and my interaction with the people that came out, it seems like needs to be some policies and procedures on the firms that you hire to do this, because they're asking for things that personally I don't think you need, nor do I think should be out in the public realm. You're not the IRS. You're paying. You ask us to pay for our property tax stuff. Also, in my particular situation, I haven't bought a piece of equipment in 22 years, I think it is. Good luck finding the valuation of that equipment. The IRS only asked me to keep my original invoices for 7 years. If I have to look this information up and try to find, I'm not sure I'd even be able to duplicate the original invoices to offset whatever numbers they come up with. I got my tax accountant involved, which cost me quite a bit of money to get this summary of information they're looking for. And he said, is this for the town assessor? I said, no, it is for the town assessor, but it's for a private firm. And his exact statement to me was, oh, they get paid based on a commission for increase in taxes. Best look at your policies and procedures and give them some direction as to what they're supposed to be doing. I can be reached at my shop. If anybody needs my phone number, they can feel free to call me. But I think you've got some issues that you need to look at. With my experience of the policies and procedures, maybe there isn't any, maybe they're not being followed, but this is a pretty cumbersome thing I've had to go through, and I really would like to know what was random about my tax returns. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next.
think if it's lit, yeah, okay, I can hear myself. Emily McIntosh, 11 Arbor Road. Later on tonight, you guys are going to be voting on allowing a Board of Ed liaison onto ECAC. I realized there was a special meeting on July 5th, but I was out of town, so I'm here tonight to speak on it. As many of you know, I was the chairman of ECAC for 7 years and resigned publicly in June. Also, along with a lot of other members. In January of this year, Mr. Santinella came to us with the idea of bringing in a Board of Ed member to help us spend our $30,000 that we had in reserve. Since then, well, right after that, we did a quick vote with ECAC. 4 people were against it. 1 abstained from voting since he was on the Board of Education, and 2 were for it but had some questions. It has always been my position as the chairman to always work with whoever our liaisons were or are with the town council and help bring some of their ideas to light. Mr. Santinella wanted this along with helping out with the band shell project. So working with the other ECAC members, we said we'll give this a shot on a trial basis, you know. So we voted on it again. We're going to do a trial basis. We're going to move forward with it. And we will wait until our June meeting to write into our bylaws. During our June meeting, a couple questions were asked by Mr. Santinella to the town manager's office as to whether or not anything had to be approved, if the wording was okay, which didn't really seem right to us because we're like, well, we're the ones changing our bylaws. ECAC broke for the summer break. They don't go back together until September. I reached out to the town manager's office and I asked to set up a meeting in July and August so that we can continue some of the work that we had been working on in the spring. That meeting was to consist of the town manager, the assistant town manager, the ECAC town advisor, and myself. After speaking to a clerk in the town manager's office, I found out that this actually has to go in front of the town council and a resolution has to be made. This was not something that ECAC had agreed to. We had no idea that this was going to be a permanent thing. We were okay with it being that it was going to be something that we had control over. When I found that out, I reached out to the members. We spoke. We decided that we could add in a Board of Ed liaison as a guest speaker and invite them every month. And if it wasn't working out, then we no longer move forward. We don't add them into our bylaws. With all of that said, we no longer have that $30,000. So there really is no reason for us to have a Board of Ed liaison in that position. The point of having them there was continuously we would get to a superintendent or a principal about our mini grant program, and it wouldn't get to any of the department heads, it wouldn't get to teachers, it wasn't trickling down, and that was the point of having a liaison. We don't have that money anymore. That money was taken away from us. It's now being rewrapped and gift wrapped as $12,000 going to Elkhorn, which now is for a mural, which should have fallen under ECAC. The town manager's office started asking me to look into zoning laws and requirements for murals in town. I'm not a town employee. Zoning laws have nothing to do with ECAC. But one of the big things in our mini grant is that we do not have money go to anybody for capital improvements, especially capital improvements that are going onto private property. So again, my door is open for anybody to ask any questions. Some of you have reached out, but there's really absolutely no need for a Board of Liaison member on this commission, especially since the money's been taken away from us. And I really don't think that the town council should approve this until ECAC has the chance to get back together in September at their next scheduled meeting, come together, which I believe right now you only have 3 members left on that commission because we've all walked away based on how the town manager has been handling us. So that's really all I have to say. Again, my email, my phone number is open for any of you guys to reach out and ask questions. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Durfee, a longtime resident at Enfield, currently on Charnley Road. I have a tax concern, tax collector concern. It may seem minor, but it may be many more people who wanted to say something but haven't. I am 90% disabled veteran. My wife is 100% disabled from Social Security. And we applied for the reduction in taxes. We got that. When I completed the paperwork, I filled out a form that asked if I wanted to apply it to my house or my cars. And I wanted to apply to my car. Last year, somehow there was a mistake, and they applied it, misapplied it, and I had to go back and get it straightened out, and we were all set. This year, the same thing happened. I went back to the tax department, and I asked them, what happened? The same problem? Oh, no. The tax collector has decided that all those reductions would be applied to your home property. I never got any indication of why that happened. I didn't know, I fully expected not to have to pay a large tax bill on my car, and that all my tax would be paid through my mortgage, but that didn't happen. And I just didn't understand how, without notifying me, without any kind of prior notice that could happen, and now I have to pay my property taxes for my car without any say in the matter. And it may seem like a minor issue, but it is a big issue for me, and I'm sure there are other people in the same boat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Lisa Ellis, Green Valley Drive. I've been a member of the AFSCME Local 1029 Union for over 30 years and an executive board member for many years as well. Members of our union provide vital services to the town through many different departments, such as emergency dispatch, water pollution control, refuse and resource management, highway, building and grounds, library, fleet maintenance, and custodial services. The union and the town worked hard to negotiate the contract that you will be considering tonight. The contract was ratified by a 5-to-1 margin, showing that the vast majority of our members have confidence in this contract. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay.
Good evening, William Shapiro, Updike, Kelly, and Spellacy, here representing Mr. Kevin Riley and Mr. Michael Oshafsky. Mr. Riley owns the property located on 14 Pleasant Street, Mr. Oshafsky at 12 Pleasant Street. At the July 5th Town Council meeting, on or about the 2-hour, 34-minute mark, Councilor Ludwig expressed his concern with regard to the upcoming demolition and construction abutting the properties on Pleasant Street. And I just want to represent to the council that I have had discussions with both Attorney Tallberg and Attorney Serrato, collectively, independently, and they've been somewhat productive. However, we've received no information to date with regard to what is going on. As recently as last week, I spoke to Attorney Serrato. He informed me that a demolition company has been approved. I'm not sure who that is at this point, which concerns me. Secondarily, it's unclear where the property lines are exactly, so to the extent that they're going to set up some sort of netting or fencing, we don't know whose property it is for sure. And I inquired as to whether or not a survey's been done. The fact that neither attorney's here, I don't want to speak for them, so I won't go into the result of that conversation. But very simply, I requested a site walk. I think I'll get it. But in the meantime, within the last month, an artist rendering has been erected. There's a sign that indicates that there's a toxic air environment, which hasn't been communicated to either of my clients. We don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. And as recently as this week, whether or not it occurred last week or today, a fence has been installed around the old theater. So, I understand that there's a lot of moving parts here, but we need to be in communication with one another. We're left in the dark. We don't know what's going on. And, I think that we need to do a better job of resolving this for both the town's sake and for my client's sake. And I believe that Mr. Riley is going to speak for himself, representing what he's observed today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Kevin Riley, and I'm at 14 Pleasant Street. So I haven't heard from anyone here. I think last time I left, you guys realized that you had an open invitation to come and see me. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for taking the interest to come over to see my property. Let me explain to you what my concerns were and give you a feel for what your idea is, what the town's going to do. So I'd like to thank him, but I can't thank anyone else. Can't thank anyone else. Although I did invite these two, your town manager and your town's council, and under my invitation, and under me setting up a meeting, they said, well, let's talk about this thing. In the beginning, they said, let's talk about this thing like gentlemen. But I never heard from them. Next day I went in and I said, where's the meeting? Let's have a meeting. So he said, let's have a meeting. We sat down and I said, you guys haven't seen my property. He said, no. I said, would you like to come over? It's right up the street. Takes about 4 minutes to walk down there. So they came down. What'd you think of that property?
It's beautiful. I was impressed.
Yeah. Nice piece of property, historic piece of property. It was the clubhouse for Bigelow. It wasn't a house, it was a clubhouse. So apparently they brought in big carpet buyers from all over the country and wined and dined them and had cigars and sat on the porch and had their company meetings with their high-end people. So it's got a lot of history there, right? A lot of history. So today it starts. With still no response from anyone. The only thing I got was a certified letter from a company out of, help me, what company did you hire to put up fences around my property today? Were they out of Groton or something? Does anyone know who on this board know who they hired to knock down those buildings?
It's Weiss Construction.
Who is it?
Weiss Construction.
And where are they out of?
I believe Weiss Construction is out of Norwich.
Okay, yes, you're correct. Did you know that? Did you know that?
So,
Did
sir,
you-
this is not a back and forth. Sorry.
I'm sorry?
You have 2 minutes left. This is not a back and forth.
Okay. All right, so today it started. They came, blocked my right-of-way. My people could not get into my place. They had to wait for 20 minutes because they had a truck there that was parked in the middle of a right-of-way. They put up the fences on the Lamagna side. I had dinner with Mike Oshasky tonight. I came back to the house before I came here. Now the fence has been ripped down. The town fence has been ripped down because there's probably 100 to 150 people that walk through that right-of-way and through your parking lot. Now they have no place to go, so they go through my property. So if they go through my property, am I responsible for them? And if I am, then you damn well better give me an insurance rider to protect me from that kind of traffic, because I can't block it off because Mike's people come through it and my people come through it. So what am I to do now? What's my answer? That I have 150 people walking through my property, down my steep steps, and if they're going the other way on Pleasant Street, they're going through Mike's property. So Mike and I need to be protected because you haven't done anything to this point to settle this issue. You haven't responded to my attorney. You haven't come and seen my place. You've done nothing. And now you have 2 attorneys in town that can't show up to a meeting. Shame on you.
Hello, Gary Young, Abbey Road. I have a few items that I wanted to present to the council tonight. First, I'd like to address the traffic concerns we have in town, and specifically as a resident on Abbey Road. However, the overarching concern is not just mine, I am sure, but many other residents in this town. You can simply sit at any major intersection for any period of time in our town and watch as vehicles continue to ignore the traffic laws. Lights turn red and 3 cars will continue through that intersection. It's now become pause on green to make sure you can safely go through. People that have green arrows need to watch for oncoming traffic as well, since the oncoming traffic does not stop at those red lights. In addition, the right-of-way for through traffic has also become challenging at best with some of our main intersections, as people will turn into lanes of oncoming traffic without any regard for said right-of-way. Many of the intersections, such as Elm Street, Duncan, or the Route 190 intersection near the on-off ramps of Route 190, and you can include the intersections of Route 190 next to CVS, Chase Bank, or the Costco intersection as well, have had many accidents over the last 6 months, easily found on the patch or the police records. These concerns need to become a town-wide focus with all of our leaders. The comment in the local town publications, along with the social media platforms for some time now, clearly indicate this is an issue that has not gone away and has gotten worse across many of our local residential streets. My wife and I have lived on Abbey Road for 16 years now and have resided there long enough to see the street repaved without any addition of sidewalk. From Grant Road to Jewel Street specifically, there is a small stretch of sidewalk which consists of about 4 homes that head northeast across the street from us. We had more than once requested that a sidewalk be added to this section of stretch of road. Unfortunately, the passing of our recent representation has created somewhat of an issue here, because now this district does not have representation to help us with that concern. The speed limit on this stretch of road is listed at 30 miles an hour. And I do not want to mention that if the feeling of the traffic pace was even at 40, then I would not be sitting here raising the concern. As we all may admit from time to time, we are all driving over a posted speed limit at any one time of the day. I am bringing this to your attention as we feel we are speaking of speeds well more than 30 or 40 miles an hour easily on this stretch of road. More importantly, I suspect the average pace of the speeds is closer to 50 and above, and many times much greater than that. This stretch of road is a through street or cut through between the towns of Ellington, Enfield, Summers, and Tolland. There is a much larger amount of traffic during very specific times of day, which I have spoken to the police department and asked for police presence, which to this time still has not happened. The morning commute from 6 to 8:30 a.m., the lunch window from 11:30 to 2, and then during the evening commute roughly 4:30 to 6. During these times, we have vehicles including, but not limited to, contractor vehicles and large flatbed trailers from just about every possible company, including, but not limited to, Spazzarini Construction, Holden Trucking, Butler Trucking, BB Landscaping, along with Beaver Tree Service and oil delivery services from Rich Oil and Taylor Energy, which resides at the end of our street. To those business owners specifically, if they're listening, and their employees, I ask that you become a community partner and start becoming aware of your speeds, not only on Abbey Road, but all of our town streets. Again, this is a residential street, not a highway. Along with the contractor vehicles mentioned above, we have many motorcycles. You can hear them with ease. Cars and trucks of all sizes. This includes marked and unmarked police vehicles, including the state police, that either live nearby or are just cutting through our street. If you're running late to a shift, leave earlier. If you're going home, respect our posted speed limits and the kids that live in our street. These vehicles are not only disregarding this posted speed limit in this stretch of road mentioned.
Excuse me, Mr. Young,
Yes.
time's up.
You want me to finish for the next?
You can come back.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I didn't think I hit 5 minutes. My apologies.
Next.
Good evening. John Ungeier, 271 Abbey Road, Enfield, Connecticut. I come before you this evening to express a concern as an Enfield District 1 resident. In early April of this year, we all mourned the untimely loss of one of Enfield's finest citizens, longtime District 1 Town Council member, Mr. Joey Bosco, and we miss him terribly. At Joey's passing, the Enfield Republican Town Committee was forced to engage its internal process to select a replacement council representative for the open District 1 Republican seat. There were several Republican candidates who expressed interest in the position. The Republican Town Committee, the Candidate Review Board, was tasked with the goal of selecting a candidate who best met the requirements of the position, like first residing in District 1, and a candidate who most closely aligned with the ideals exemplified by Joey Bosco. We did this for two very good reasons, out of respect for Joey Bosco, but also to align with Enfield's District 1, who elected Joey to that seat, ensuring that District 1's voice would still be represented on this council. Of the several Republican candidates who expressed interest, one candidate met all the selection criteria and best aligned with the prescribed goals, and was unanimously selected by the board as the best Republican candidate for the position. That candidate was Jim Nasuda. I've come to know Jim over the past several years and found him to be rational, reasonable, level-headed, uses good judgment, he's friendly, and he's a good and decent man, and he's earned my respect. Jim has volunteered his time helping the youth of Enfield for many years, and everyone who's worked with him and holds him in the highest regard. He served as a Hazardville firefighter, he coached Enfield hockey, and served on their board of directors, and he was a personal friend of Joey Bosco. And yet, when Jim was presented to this council for appointment, he was not appointed. I understand that he was not appointed because a couple of Democrat councilors didn't like his answers to a couple of purely political questions. Well, what did you think you were getting? A Democrat? Again, what did you expect? Enfield's District 1 didn't elect a Democrat. You needed to be fair to Jim and show some understanding. Jim's a Republican, and a Republican who best represents the ideals that we elected.
Mr. Mayor, in September of 2017, you found yourself in a very similar position at the passing of then longtime Councilor Red Egger. Your party's caucus selected you as their best candidate for the seat, and your name was forwarded to the then Republican majority town council. Now, Republicans don't decide who the best Democratic candidate is. How could they ever? They rely and trust in your party's good judgment to select who your best candidate will be. Republicans understand this, of course, and although we do not agree politically in all areas, we do try to respect our political differences. Even Elizabeth Davis was appointed by then Republican majority town council. Again, understanding our political differences, but respecting the legitimate selection process. As a District 1 resident, you have an obligation and a duty to fill our District 1 seat. Until our seat is filled, this council is doing District 1 and the town of Enfield an awful disservice. You are dismissing District 1 with its rightly elected representation on this council. You are denying us the powers and the privileges conferred to us by our Enfield Town Charter. Our town government is not functioning the way it was designed. And if it's not functioning properly, then it becomes dysfunctional by default, which is exactly what you are right now, dysfunctional. The town of Enfield is better than that. We deserve better than that, and we demand better of you. Take note. Please take note. I've talked with many District 1 voters, and the voters of District 1 are not pleased that our seat remains vacant. So what do we do now? Last thing. We charge the Enfield Town Council to fix it. It's not right what you did to this good man. Do what you should have done months ago. Find a way, create a way, make a way, and appoint Jim Nasuda to this council as our District 1 representative. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to? Yeah.
Starting my own timer. Rob Kwasnicki, 123 Wynwood Drive. And I want to share a pleasantry, a story with the town council. I had an opportunity with a business associate out of Glastonbury, Connecticut. We were exploring a joint business venture here in Enfield, and she was unfamiliar with the town of Enfield. So I offered to take her on a tour of our beautiful town and show her all the diverse landscape and the beauty of Enfield and all the opportunities that are here already and that have been in the works and that are going to continue developing. So what she knew of Enfield was, of course, the mall area and the shopping. She's like, oh, there's more to Enfield than to shopping? I said, no, there's a tremendous amount to Enfield, as you all know. So we drove through the mall area and then headed east and showed the farm and the open rural area. Drove by Collins Creamery, showed Powder Hollow, and she was blown away by it. She said, "This is a great town, and it's very similar to Glastonbury, where we have upscale, suburban, we have our shopping district, etc." I said, "Well, it gets better." So I took her to what I think is a gem of Enfield, and that's Thompsonville. She was blown away. She thought it was like a little, Greenwich Village of New England, with the small shops, the independent shops, non-chain, non-corporate. And anyway, she was very excited about that, and just wanted to share that with you, that the town is, and with all the residents and whoever may be watching on YouTube, Enfield has a tremendous amount to offer for families and businesses. It has a lot of forward-looking opportunities. We ended up with one thing. I want to show her one of our greatest assets in town is that we have a beautiful riverfront. And so took her down by Bigelow Commons, showed the train station, how that's coming in, and how that's going to just drive the economic engine of this town. And I was going to show her the boat launch. We did go to the boat launch, the one by Bigelow Commons, and came upon the great big yellow sign that I'm sure you're all aware of. Anyway, she started chuckling, and she said, "What's that about?" I said, "Well, you know, we have some vocal people in town that are passionate about town, and they want to speak up." And she asked, "Well, is that for, is the whole town council, like, inferred in that?" And I said, "I have no idea. I don't know who that's, you know, referencing. I don't even know what it's about." I said, "But one thing I do know, there's one town councilor that it absolutely has nothing to do with, and that's my District 1 councilor, Jim Nasuda, and I hope I could see him being represented here. Thank you."
Thank you.
Peter Janitis, 3 Farmstead Circle. I had a lot of things I wanted to talk about. This one from District 1, though, wasn't one of them. But I think Mr. Ungeier gave a very inspirational talk to you guys, followed up by Mr. Kay there. We, as individuals living in District 1, really don't have anybody that we can go directly to. I can remember going to Bosco many times to talk about different things, and it's just not there anymore. I mean, we got problems with our street and everything, and I would like to be able to sit here and look over there and say, oh, there's nobody there. But to say, if there were somebody there, remember when we talked to you about such and such a thing? What are you guys going to do about it? You talked to the rest of the counselors? But one thing that you can do, I think, because I'm getting a little rusty on parliamentary procedure and stuff, but now that the politics of this whole thing is over, that the emotions of that seat is over, maybe some of you have had time to step back, reflect on what was done and why it was done. And I know that I don't think there's anybody up here sitting here when the one excuse that I keep hearing from Democrats is the Arnone thing. And I hope everybody knows and understands why that happened. And that's the only time, to my knowledge, that it's happened. And it wasn't because they disagreed with anybody, because as it was just said a little while ago, Bob, you've been replaced up here, no problems. You didn't have to bring 3 candidates before the Republicans. Liz Davis was put on here, and if there's anybody any more different than the Republican point of view, that's it. But she still got to sit up here. Now, when you took your vote a couple months ago, according to the parliamentary procedure, anybody who voted yay, not to have, or no, whoever voted in the majority not to have Jim take his seat, any one of you can call for a revote. Look it up, and that's how it works. They can't call for a revote because they voted for him. But those who voted against him, if you want, you can ask for another vote. And I would hope you reflect a conscientious reason why you voted the way you did before, and maybe just fill the seat. You still have a supermajority, for Christ's sakes. As far as this guy's property that came up here and got a little loud, I took my wife down there to show her. We drove in back. And if you haven't been back there, you should take a look at it. And that building, the theater, is right there on the line. And as far as the assessments and everything, I'm disappointed there aren't more people here tonight telling stories, but man, I've heard a good 50 stories, outrageous assessments going up, and the conduct or the behavior of the town assessor to some of these people. I've actually had some people tell me that they've gone out in the parking lot and cried after. thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like for the first time to come in front? Second time? Mr. Young?
George Young, 8 Holly Lane. The brochure that came with the real estate tax bill gave us some insight to some important tax information. It states that the town real estate and personal property taxes of more than $100 are due in 2 equal installments payable July 1, 22 and January 1, 23. There was no mention of when the motor vehicle taxes are due except on the bill indicating July 1, 2022. Why do we have to pay the vehicle taxes all at once when it is over $100 in July? Other towns do split it up. The last I knew, personal property are things that are movable, such as vehicles, as distinguished from real property, which is attached to realty. The council should look into this, as I believe you are collecting monies from the taxpayers early, so you have the money to pay the 5 districts, the 5 fire districts, in August or September, their full amount that was billed by them, regardless of whether the town has collected it. It is time for change, and this council should start that change. At the last meeting, Master Sergeant Hendrickson wanted to change his veterans exemption from his home to his vehicle. The bad part is that he had to pay the motor vehicle tax all at once versus splitting it up into 2 payments for realty. Again, I repeat, it is unfair to pay it all at once, especially when we don't know something, such as there was no fire district tax this year in my district. There was a great explanation by the town manager subsequent to his concern. As a veteran myself, her information was timely and made it clear that it's our responsibility to let the assessor know how to split this exemption. We just need to be advised as to when it has to be done and how. Her interaction with the taxpayer was something the town needs to do more of. He is now her friend for life, and trust me, we all need more of those. To the town manager through the council, I used to enjoy reading the PAR report, which is supposed to be published after the second council meeting every month except July and August. I've not seen one since June 16th, 2021. Has it been discontinued or is it somewhere else? As a senior and not getting any younger, I'd like to know if the town is sponsoring a shred day, because it has been a few years pre-COVID since that happened. Would it not be eligible for the ARPA funding? I know I have stuff to be shredded, as do many other seniors and taxpayers. I don't know if the town council is paying for IT services for fire departments, but the information that is posted there by them is either obsolete, uninformative, or not posted at all. Perhaps someone on the council could look into what the town is spending, if anything, for this service. I'll stop. My 3 minutes are up.
Thank you. Mr. Riley?
There's no back and forth. What does that mean? What does that mean? There's no back and forth.
There's no communication. You know, you can talk.
Obviously, there's no communication.
Well.
Obviously.
Well.
So the only remedy that I have is to be here in front of you. It's the only remedy I have. You won't answer to my attorney. There's no back and forth with my attorney. There's no back and forth with Michael Olszewski. There's no back and forth with me. There is no back and forth. So the only time that I had to be able to address you is here. And I want to be prepared. Why ain't you answering my attorney's calls? Why is there no back and forth with my attorney? Why is there no back and forth when I invite every one of you to come and see what I'm trying to do there and to see, like Mr. Ludwig did, that the building is directly on my property. Bricks are here, my property's here. This is the only avenue I have. It's the only avenue I have. You won't answer my attorney. You won't answer Mr. Olszewski. Mr. Olszewski was told by your people here in economic development that those were going to be parking lots, and that he was going to park across the street. His 9 residents were going to park across the street, walk all the way through Bigelow, walk up Main Street, walk up Pleasant Street, and then walk up the stairs and leave their cars. A fellow over there works for Cox. I don't know if Cox wants their cars sitting out there. Is my time almost up? I see you maybe watching my time. Where's the back and forth? There's no back and forth. You set up fences today. They knocked down a fence on my property. 150 people walked through my property today. Where's the back and forth? Gina, we need to have back and forth.
Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, before Mr. Riley leaves, would you like me to address some of the issues?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Are you the town attorney?
I'm just playing one on TV tonight. I'm the town manager, but I do have the project
I'd like to
notes.
sit and listen to you then.
Okay. Just for clarification, based on the information that I have available to me, there was a pre-demolition meeting with Weiss Construction that occurred last week.
Did we have back and forth with them?
We did.
Did I?
Well, the notes of that meeting and what I've pulled up from my Thompsonville file for Strand and Lamagna show that both Mark Serrato and Jim Talberg contacted Attorney Shapiro last week, and that he agreed that both he and you were available for a walkthrough tomorrow or Wednesday in order to walk the property and show you the parameters of the construction, as well as walk you through the process of what the easement is going to look like as it is maintained. Your tenants, the visitors to your tenants, as well as Mr. Olszewski's, are not being asked to park anywhere other than where they park right now.
Well, God bless you.
I also have notes in the file that the mayor talked specifically to Mr. Olszewski upon his return from out of the country and shared all of these details with him as well. So I don't know about the fence and it being brought down. We clearly do not want anybody traversing your property, and we can address that tomorrow. They did mobilize today because the fencing became available. Right now, all that's happening is the cleaning out of the Lamagna, because a lot of items were left behind when those departments relocated. They will then move over to do some preliminary environmental remediation of the Strand. All of the cleaning is going to occur over the next couple of weeks. My recollection of the meeting is that the Lamagna Center comes down first. That gets cleared away. Access is from that side street. Traffic is only going to be in a one-way direction to not adversely impact the neighbors. Once the Lamagna site is set, they're going to use that as a staging area to go directly across to deal with the Strand. The wall that faces your property will be the last one that gets tapped in order to preserve all the rights. Weiss Construction has also hired a flagman who will expressly be dedicated to that easement. His only job will be communicating with the cab operator, so as cars come in or exit, work stops in order to create a safety zone in order to move people back and forth. So all of that was scheduled to be communicated to you and your attorney during the walkthrough. If my project notes are wrong and that phone conversation did not occur between Attorney Talberg, Serrato, and Shapiro, then we'll get to the root of that tomorrow as well. But that's what the notes reflect.
Well, I think if you reflect back on Mr. Shapiro, that he called and was not able to get that.
And I guess that's the conundrum of where we are today, Mr. Riley, because my notes specifically It's an email.
So if I didn't come here tonight, thank you for that information, because all I'm looking for is information. I'm trying to put windows in. I'm trying to do some work at my property. I can't do that because I don't know what you're doing. So we've obviously had a little back and forth here tonight, and I am grateful for that.
Thank
Grateful.
you, Mr. Riley.
Well,
Appreciate it.
And if you could
Are you
just,
done?
I am, but I think that it's important for you to communicate with Attorney Shapiro, who is left, because the project notes that I keep on this project show that the email happened and the communication happened on Thursday, August 4th at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The note says we are all set. Nelson and the general manager of the demolition contractor are in the process of scheduling a date for the site walk for next week, probably Tuesday, Wednesday, or possibly Thursday. I called Bill Shapiro.
Nelson,
He and Mr. Riley are
Nelson,
available
Nelson.
those days.
Just as a point
Okay.
of order, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right.
could we begin?
Well, we're all set. We're going
Thanks
to
a
be
lot.
moving on. Thank you.
I stayed because of her.
Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Thanks. Thanks for my audience.
Mr. Janitis, 3 minutes.
Peter Janitis, 3 Farmstead Circle, and please don't take offense or anything personal about what I'm about to say to some of you people. I think you take somebody like Mr. Riley there and Michael Shefsky, they have the power to get an attorney, they have the power to come down, they have the chutzpah to come here and speak before you and, speak quite loudly to you. I look around at you guys sitting up there. If you got a couple $100 extra on your taxes, I don't know if a lot of you guys would be hurting. I don't think any of you would be. Now think of the people who are way over on the other side of the tracks that are getting assessment increases, or some of these farmers who are getting excessive amounts because of one thing or another with the town assessor. But the point I want to make is, you just let Mr. Riley come up here and have a back and forth with the town manager. Not one of you objected to that. You shouldn't have allowed that to happen. You don't do that. But you did. And you know why, or at least in my opinion why, it's because of the lack of experience sitting up here. You got one man down there who knows all the ins and outs you need to know about the council and the town government. You have 2 other people that have been up here for a while. I don't know the depths to what you understand on all the things that you should be doing or you're doing after the fact. But there's a lot of inexperience sitting up here, an awful lot. And once again, that brings me back to do what's right about getting a second vote for the District 1 seat. Now, I can't even think of the other thing I wanted to say. I don't know, just, come on, please use your, look at your consciences and get that seat filled. Thank you.
Thank you.
William Shapiro. I was just told that somebody stated that there was an email that was sent to me that I didn't respond to. Could I ask who said that?
Okay.
Can you hang around?
Yes. Okay.
Do it after. Who is next? Mr. Young? Yeah. Thank you.
Here we go. So the vehicles that I was spoken of earlier are not only disregarding the speed limit in the stretch of the road mentioned, but also seem to miss the fact that there's a stop sign at the intersection of Abbey Road and Elands Road as they continue to drive right through it without even a thought of stop. As the nicer weather has come into play, the traffic is increasing, or so are the reasons for the residents to be outside and the opportunity for accidents and unfortunate events to increase. Although I do not feel I should have to justify my concern for help with the enforcement of the speed limit to slow the pace of these traffic patterns, I will mention a few specific things that I feel warrant additional concern and the need for some help in addition to the nicer weather comment above. First, we have two elderly couples that live directly across the street, and although they do have the sidewalk I mentioned to walk back and forth, we all have dogs that we prefer to walk past that length of the sidewalk. As noted above, with the length of the sidewalk being in all four houses, that leaves us walking on the street until we get to the intersecting side road of Jewel Street. And with traffic hitting the higher speed limits, you must wonder not if, but when something bad will happen. We also have delivery services from UPS, FedEx, and the Postal Service continuously all hours of the day stopping on the side of the street trying to do their job. There are also at least a few residents using local senior center buses in the same area with the above-mentioned traffic concerns. Once again, these employees are often putting their lives in harm's way as these speeders do not even slow down or move over, as some of them barely get past the vehicle. In addition, we have teenagers and many other children who are out playing, as noted earlier, basketball and in their front yards playing as they should be without concern of the speeding traffic. In the past year, I believe we've had 2 basketballs and 1 soccer ball run over so far. Now, if the ball is being run over, that means either the person didn't care enough to stop or didn't have the time to react due to the speed. If the answer is of the latter, we will be looking back, feeling something should have been done sooner than later. Earlier in the year in East Windsor, we heard of a girl lost her life for exactly that same reason. We should have done something. In addition to the elderly, the dog walking, the basketball reference, I would also like to mention we have at least a minimum of 10 bus stops between the morning and the evening in that same stretch of road during the school season. I would feel at this time, I feel that this would provide residents with I'm asking for some more self-awareness of the drivers using the street, along with more police presence or some guidance as what to do to become visible during these times, specifically noted, not during the off-peak times. I feel this would provide the residents with some level of comfort that an effort is being made to address the concern, and hopefully we can get the courtesy of the above companies mentioned earlier, along with the drivers. I feel currently that if a temperature check of the residents was taken about how they feel protected against traffic, you would find that there's definitely an area of opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Wow, that's fast reading.
Name and address again, or? Rob Kwasnicki, 123 Wynwood. From going from the previous statement, in all seriousness, I hope we reconsider, reconsider the town council, a revote and seating Jim Nasuda. If for anything, you'll blow the minds of the Enfield Republican Town Committee that happened. But the number one reason is that we need a representation. Would love to have Joey Bosco sitting there, but I'm not God. I can't make that happen. Jim was diligently selected to best represent along the line of what a Joey Bosco would do. And being a resident of District 1, along with other residents of District 1, it really does matter to us that we have an empty seat, and it's kind of disturbing to us. So I would, again, follow up with Mr. Janitis, please reconsider, do the right thing. Let's have our councilor representative seated. And I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I know it's all volunteer, and it's not easy. And the story I told you, by the way, was a true story. Enfield, with a representative, there's a lot of opportunity out here. Any budding entrepreneurs, if you're listening, you should check out Enfield. It's got a lot to offer. God bless you all.
Thank you. I think so.
Gretchen Pfeiffer Hall, 4 Summers Road. So just a suggestion related to the gentleman's concern about traffic. So when I go up to Vermont, they have these solar-powered speed things, and they now have them in summers as well. And perhaps that's something that Enfield could consider investing in, because they definitely do work. I mean, they tell you how fast you're going, and they're solar operated. So I think it might help.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Declaring public communications are over.
1 minute?
No. We're done. We're only going 2 rounds, Pete. I said 5 and then 3. Okay, next, Councilor Communications. Councilor Despard.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one thing, and it is that the Connecticut Essential Worker Relief Fund is going to be live this week. This is the Hero Pay that people may have heard about. Basically, it's a $30 million fund that's been established by Governor Lamont, and it makes all non-governmental essential frontline workers eligible for up to $1,000 each. So this is your grocery store worker, your cashier, your private healthcare worker, the people that really, stepped up and answered the bell and, were on the front lines and kept our town running safely through a public health crisis. There's 2 criteria. It's really easy. It's you had to have made under $150K a year, and you have to have been employed as a frontline worker from anywhere from March 10th, 2020 to May 7th, 2022. I want to make sure that this reaches every corner of Enfield. I feel like all too often these sorts of things don't reach the people who need it the most. So I'm going to be talking about it quite a bit. And to that end, I was going to ask, through the mayor to the town manager, Ellen, if your office could have any ideas about some outreach that we could do for this, that would be great. I'd love to hear any thoughts you might have on that. And then just to close, the website is ctessentialworkerrelief.org. I think take a couple minutes, go check out if you're eligible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Finger.
Good evening. A couple of things I want to talk about. Mr. Brennan about his tire country and the bill, and through the mayor to the manager, we are looking into things as they occur with the tax assessor and the issues, right? Like especially with the veteran, another veteran coming up tonight about this situation. It's embarrassing, very embarrassing. Mr. Where am I at here? Mr. Riley, my apologies. I really do. That it shouldn't be happening that way. And I'm hoping that everything that's happening tonight to the mayor and you and your lawyers will make it right. We'll make it right. Mr. Young, traffic issues on Abbey Road are terrible. I live off Abbey Road. And I have friends that live up the other section of Abbey Road by Coolidge and over there. They got little street signs, little signs saying, slow down. It don't work. It don't work. They've had to stop, the officers, a little traffic thing out there with the speed limit on there. And the people do kind of see it, then they slow down. I ride a motorcycle. I'm running into people texting all the time, and it's scary. It's getting very scary, even in our own roads, even on their own back streets. Something needs to be done about speeders. I went through Chicopee yesterday, last couple of days. They got speed bumps out there. It's just amazing. You can't go fast. And that solar sign, when you're doing the right speed limit and it has like your one below it, has like a smiley face that comes out. It says like, great job. I didn't see the one that goes over because I didn't go over it. So I have no idea. But I know the smiley face was smiling at me when I went through there quite a few times. And, Mr. Ungar and Rob and Peter, I am 100% behind Jim Masuda. I will vote for him again. And if I knew I could nominate him, I would. I think that I don't want our council to be the council of 10, the first ever in this town. I think it's wrong. We need to get that seat filled. And if it's by Jim or someone else that you recommend, then I'm willing to go with that yes. And I'm hoping that others will do the same, because this is terrible that we don't have 11 people on this council. This is what this council is supposed to be about, 11 people on it in each district and our at-larges. So that's how I feel about it. I wanted to let you know. And God bless everybody. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Councilor Mangini?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that the Mount Carmel feast went very, very well this weekend. I want to thank all of the workers, the
filled out personal property all the time. I was never asked to give them a lease. I was never asked to give them my insurance information. I was never asked to give them my taxes. So I have concerns about who we're using. So if you can get me that information and I can then share it back with Mr. Brennan, I would appreciate it. Ms. McIntosh, I apologized to you a few weeks ago when you were here, and I'm going to apologize to you again. No volunteer on any of our commissions or boards should be disrespected or ignored. It's unacceptable. Unacceptable. So I think we should all feel that way, because that's a reflection on us. The disabled vet, again, Mr. Riley, I apologize to you because I had all intents and purposes of coming over to see your property. However, I was in this building on Friday and I spoke to somebody in planning and they told me, I said to them, how's it going? And they said everything was great. It was all running smoothly because I saw the nice signs over there. So I will say this, I want to see this project go forward, but I don't want it to go forward if we disrespect our residents and their property.
Thank you.
None of our projects should go forward if we are going to go out there and disrespect or bully residents. Nothing is worth that. It's very tiring to always apologize from this dais. And it seems like that's all we're doing. So I question why. Why every meeting are we having bitter people coming forward? I think we all need to look in the mirror and say, what are we doing wrong? So maybe we can reflect on that, because I know personally, I am tired of it. If it's not a tax issue, it's a resident being disrespected for every week. It's a litany of people coming up. And we really need to take a good look at that. So, and Doug, thank you. Thank you for saying that you will stand behind our candidate. I appreciate that with all my heart. So, have a lot more for later, but.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ludwig.
Through the mayor, I have some specific questions, and I want to make sure I say them in order. When it comes to the personal property, I know this has been done in the past. Again, when you're managing a situation where we've had since February, it behooves us to tell people what's going on, even if it's something we've done for many years, like personal property audits. So again, these sort of things don't happen because, whether for better or worse, again, there's always multiple sides. The community thinks there's something going on here. Why don't we anticipate this instead of creating more issues? So what I'm asking is very simple. I want to know why this firm was selected versus prior firms. For the last 10 years, how much commission did we pay out, or stipend, whatever word you want to use, because the individuals are correct. We do pay out a stipend for the amount of taxes that's collected. And what the expectation for this year as compared to the last 10 years, which will be telling to everyone what's going on, in my opinion. Because if you're making more in a commission, a stipend, whatever you're calling, that tells you, what, in my opinion, what's going on, because it's based on cash. And I also want to make sure that, again, so my understanding of this in the past is there were specific industries in town that were selected for a personal property audit. So they're specific, whether it be restaurants or whatever it may be. What was the criteria used here? So we can, again, when someone calls us, we can tell them this is what's going on. Instead of getting everyone so frustrated over everything, we're going to hire a lawyer to look through all this, yet all this is going on, and we never talk about this as a council. And we wonder why people are frustrated when they come before us. So those are specific questions that if you can get answered to me by the next meeting, I'd appreciate it. The letter that went out to the golf range, I'm not sure if it's the same property, but there is work being done back there. I don't know if that's specific to the golf range. My suggestion is, again, when the council asks for that to go out, can I please get a copy when we have a correspondence that my name is associated with the town council? I'd like to see the correspondence. So again, when someone asks me about what's going on with the project, I can say the letter went out, and now we're negotiating whatever we're doing. Again, if that project is going to go through and the golf range is gone, the siting council has to come to Enfield for a public hearing so people can voice their opinion. That's what the purpose of that letter was, and I appreciate you sent it out. However, I didn't even know it went out because I didn't get a copy of it when it went out. So again, I'm asking for, when these things happen, that we're included in it. Because again, we're the ones that are going to ultimately make the decision. So again, I would appreciate, because there is work going on in the back. I don't know if that's part of the farm that's back there, or that's part of the golf range. And it's being cleared out. So it worries me a little bit that this has kind of gone quiet since it was brought up in May. And has the siting council had a meeting on it? Can we ask that?
Yes.
And what is the outcome of that meeting with the siting council?
The outcome is that they sided with Enfield Solar One LLC, and that is going to become a photovoltaic electric generating facility.
Then we have to demand that they come to Enfield and have a public hearing.
There's already been a declaratory ruling, and I believe that the public hearing requirement is based on size. So we did ask for additional information, and recently...
Why can't we slap an injunction on them? It's our town.
So we did ask for additional information, and I received on Friday. There was additional communication that they are requiring the petitioner, which is Enfield Solar, to install landscape screening at the northwest corner of the facility along the fence line, and that they voted to modify condition number 4 in order to make this mandatory. So in receiving this, I did speak with
So just, when did you receive that? Just curious. When did you receive that information?
It came into the office on Friday. So I did speak with Mr. Lipton, and he was able to get his lease extended through the cemetery association that owns the land so that he can continue and finish his season through mid-fall.
That doesn't do us, I mean, we're losing another valuable piece of farmland that, again, to solar farms, it's going to tie right into the rails to trails. Again, what's going on in our country? Farmland's being bought up by foreign governments and rich people, and we need to maintain our farms in this town. And you're going to put a solar farm in a beautiful piece of property, whether it's a golfing situation or whatever, and a town, because they went through the siting council, the town has no say in it.
Unfortunately, you are correct.
But why can't we slap an injunction on them? Because again, they bent over backwards to put in a solar farm over on Jarmark's property. They did a great job. They came to town. They had public hearings. They were very upfront about it. And now, because it's not as big as what was happening on Jarmark's farm, we're not going to have a public hearing when it affects again, it affects them a lot. There's a lot of residents that live on that, right now, that abut that property.
So in conversations with Mr. Lipton, he's actually looking to relocate, and there's also some parcels of land, including one that's landlocked on the other side where he owns, that then abuts the Rails to Trails proposed area that he's interested in. He's also looking at some potential land swaps, and he's very much interested in continuing to do business in Enfield.
But if we don't put our foot down, the siting council will find another piece of property, put another solar farm on. I mean, this is just the beginning. They're not going to stop because, again, if we're funneling energy up to Massachusetts, which was the point of the original plan, this is not going to stop. I mean, we have to do, so we can't just let this happen without having, at the very least, a public hearing in the town of Enfield so people can come and speak to it. I'm sorry, if we accept this, then this is just the beginning, and it turns me into Rails to Trails, and I know you got a letter from, from the state reps, and I know you met with the East Windsor first selectman. Again, I want to be publicly clear. East Long Meadow is already announced they're extending their trail to our border. East Windsor, their selectmen have already put a letter together saying they want a trail. We passed it a year ago we actually went on Rails to Trails because we're trying to, again, work with, if individuals want to open up the rail. If we open up the rail, there's going to be, that farmland is going to be industrial. It's that simple. They're not, I mean, again, if you're bringing in something to be manufactured, you're not going to have farmland. And so I want to be clear publicly that, in my understanding, the latest of what's going to happen with the Rails to Trails is that the lease, we've asked for a copy of the lease. We never got it from the DOT. We asked for it a year ago. My understanding, there's an FOI going on to get that lease because the lease expired over a year ago. I'm making an assumption. It doesn't sound like they extended it, but we'll see. We'll see.
So that's been part of my, and I was going to cover this in my report.
Right.
So if you want to continue.
Yeah,
with your questions.
this is why it's so important. In that part of town, we're slowly losing farmland, and if the siting council is going to, again, go over local authority, this is just, again, a continuation of what's going to happen. I don't think we can accept it as a town, in my opinion. And same thing with the Rails to Trails. Two of our neighbors that we're in the middle are in agreement to open up a trail. We could have a multi-state trail at a very little cost to the taxpayer, and yet, we're the ones that are sort of the fly in the middle between the two that are already publicly announced that they want to do this. So I just want to be clear in a back and forth that you thought our other towns, and again, this is a bipartisan effort. State senator from South Windsor, state Senate representative from Ellington, state representative from the 59th, and the first selectman who's a Democrat in East Windsor. This is not a Republican-Democrat thing. This is, again, something on how we're going to develop that part of town. And it's important, if we just ignore this, again, maybe they're going to tell us what we're going to have to do. And again, they still haven't answered the question of that bridge. Could that bridge hold, and again, they said they'd have to look at it. And if anyone's seen that bridge, there's no way it takes a 100-ton car. And I'm sorry, I want to be clear, and I don't mean to be a jerk on this, and I'm sorry if I'm using language. If someone thinks we're going to spend all that money to open up that line, we're going to only get two care of trains a month for whatever they're delivering, whether it be biofuel or whatever, why would you spend all that money for 2 trips a month? Come on. At some point, people have to open up their eyes what's going on. And this is something the town has to stay on top of, because it's for that part of town, it's huge. So if you address it, I want to be clear on this, because again, I think there's been some miscommunication on this, and I don't want it to be I want it to be clear, because our neighbors from the south and our neighbors from the north have very clear things they're already doing. And we're the ones that hopefully can join them and develop. Again, we talk about nature and everything else, we could do it pretty easily. And so I'll let you address what you need to address in your report. So Abbey Road, I want to, just so you know, the referendum did pass, and then part of that referendum is to extend a brand new sidewalk from the Neylands Road all the way to the Four Corners. So I know there's that little terrible section of sidewalk that is horrible that no one even knows about. The plan is to extend it from Neylands Road all the way to the Four Corners, of Town Farm Road. I don't know when the project will be in, but it was approved by the taxpayers. And I've been, since the 90s, as you well know, I'm for certain traffic calming. And we've been asking for it on Abbey Road on the other end, because you're right, if you actually stand there and you come around in Coolidge and you see the way those cars are coming around, I don't know how parents can stand there. I don't know how they can do it. So I'm sure it's just as bad in your section of road as well. It is scary having a little kid on that sidewalk, even on the sidewalk. Never mind venturing into the road. I mean, I'm just saying, it is scary when you come around that corner And I think you're right. We need to look in traffic calming, not only there, but other sections of town where there's just as bad as traffic. Obviously, not to the extent and the speed that Abbey Road deals with. I understand but something hopefully public safety eventually looks at. And I know we've made some inquiries on it, but I've been a fan of traffic calming since the 90s, and I'm saying either the humps or the dips. I'm not a fan of that cut road crap, because I tell you, it's terrible over on Depot Hill Road. I mean, it's just, I don't know, I know it's over there, but I'm saying I agree with you. And, but the good news is that the sidewalk's been approved by the taxpayers. So some good news. And my last thing, was I gonna say, sorry, DPW. Oh, and I know I'd asked, and if you address it, could we get a full report on the amount of money used for 4th of July, why it went over budget? And again, just an explanation in the past, and I know things are different now, but when there was overtime approved, we would get a heads up that overtime was being considered. So, hey, look, we're going to spend an extra $2-3 grand, whatever it may be. It didn't happen here for whatever reason. And the other thing I'm concerned, 4 years ago, we worked out a deal where, again, we didn't have to have, the vendors took care of their trash. So we didn't have to call in DPW for the extra work and save some money. And I guess that didn't happen this year. And that was one of the reasons why we lowered their money down to, I think, 50 grand, whatever the number is. So I'm just saying, overtime should be, we should get a heads up through leadership to us. And I understand maybe it was, but 2-3 grand over budget is 2-3 grand over budget. And those are things that we should be made aware of as it's happening, in my opinion. That's another request that, in my opinion, we should be knowing as it's going on, not, hey, we found out after the fact. But if we can get a full report on that, 'cause I want to know exactly what we spent the extra money on, so I can just, for my own edification. And I think for now, again, my only other, you can answer this in your town manager's report, but again, I think I want to be clear on something. And again, I want to give you the opportunity to address it. If it's, again, one of the reasons why, and again, in full disclosure, when I voted against you being appointed town manager, I was worried about partisanship because of your former position. Again, I want you to be able, if it's true that you went to a fundraiser in town for a Democratic candidate, it's not right. Sorry, I don't know if it's true, and that's why I'm going to let you address it. We're hearing that you went to a fundraiser for Joe Courtney in town. If that's true, I'm giving you the opportunity to address it. But that's not right. It's supposed to be a nonpartisan position, and I'm sorry, I have a problem with that. And if I'm wrong, I will be the first to admit it. So I want to make sure you get to be able to address that. And I heard it, and so I just want to make sure I address that. Thank you.
Councilor Bianchini, you had something else to say?
Yes, I would like to respond to the latest comment from Mr. or Councilor Ludwig. You know, we are individual people. We are individual voters. We are individuals. And if our town manager, town attorney, town whomever chooses to attend any function, so be it. We don't have the right to criticize or judge what others participate in or do. Because if we're going to go down that road, I have a whole litany of judgment that I can bring forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ungar.
Whew. Okay, there's a few things that I'd like to address. I'd like to thank those that came out to support Jim Nasuda. He's a great man. And I also live in District 1, so I appreciate that. Also, speaking about the traffic on Abbey Road, I live on Abbey Road, so I hear exactly what you're saying. And I'm also on the Public Safety Committee, so that's something that I can bring up and see that they can address that. I live a few houses down from a stop sign, and I hear the Jake brake on all the trucks every time they slow down and every time they take off. And I want to sit outside and maybe have some peace and quiet and without the cars racing by. And so I'm very familiar with what you're saying. And Gretchen mentioning about the solar speed, we can certainly bring that up and discuss that in public safety. Okay, also addressing Mr. Riley, through the mayor to the town manager, could you check with our attorney to see, are we allowed to go and view that site and see? I heard once attorneys were involved that we weren't allowed to go and do that they would settle it out, and then I heard things were going well. So are we allowed to go and actually visit with him and look at his property?
Well, I'm not going to speak for Attorney Tallberg, and I can check with him, but personally. You can view everything that is relevant to Mr. Riley's property and his neighbor's property from a viewpoint of either street side or city-owned property looking in. So I would not think, other than just being careful as it's being converted to a construction site, that it would be appropriate. But I can check with Attorney Talberg
Okay.
if you'd like the official clearance.
I would.
Okay.
I would, thank you, because I would be happy to come and view, and it's unfortunate that you're going through this frustration. And we did speak briefly your last time you were here at the council, so I'd like to have a positive outcome through all of this. And I do want to mention, and there's many residents that aren't aware of this, that we have an agenda that we follow, and we go through each item, and one of the items is public communications. And we sit here silently while all of you can come up 1, 2, sometimes 3 times, and we're not allowed to respond back to you. And that's what they mean by no back and forth. Otherwise, we would be here till 2 in the morning, because every one of us have an opinion about everything, and we'd be going back and forth all night. So what we do is allow everyone to come up and speak, and we have to wait our turn. And sometimes we're chomping at the bit and want to respond, and we're not allowed to. I have to wait my turn and then address what everyone is saying. So that's why we do it that way, and that's why we say there's no back and forth, and a lot of people still don't understand that. So I hope I could clarify a little bit what that means. I also wanted to thank Emily McIntosh for coming and mentioning about the EC, the Cultural Arts Committee, and their opinion on having a Board of Ed liaison. I wasn't aware that they weren't totally in favor of that, because I didn't support that myself. I think we've got enough chefs in the kitchen, and so you gave me some clarity on that, and I'm also on that committee. And I'll address and make a few other comments later on in our meeting. So, okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Councilor Mangini, just hold on one second. Councilor Mangini, do you have another, your hand was up for a minute.
No, I'm sorry. I
Okay,
had to lower
all
my
right.
hand. I apologize.
Okay, that's all right. Councilor Pisner.
Again, Ellen, I sent you the picture of 1 Knox, and I actually CC'd you, Nick, on that because it is District 4, which is our district. It's not only the property that's overgrown, you can't walk on the sidewalk. I mean, you literally can't walk on the sidewalk. And I think that's a liability for us. So if they can just go out and just do something so that, because you have to go into the road to walk. So that's where my concern was, more than anything, and it's impassable. So, thank you.
Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to be brief. I want to respect everybody's time here, but I personally appreciate that everybody on the council, both Republican and Democrat, work for a living or once did and are retired now. I think that's really important. I think we want, a Congress that reflects us. I think we want a local legislature that reflects us, and a town council as well. So I appreciate that, and I know that we're not always going to agree on stuff, but we take very seriously people's monthly expenses, the tax rate, whether our corporate residents are being good neighbors as well, and also to making sure that the taxation rules are being followed. So I just want to say we continue, at least from my perspective, continue to be committed to getting to the bottom of these tax issues and doing so in a very public and transparent way. So I think we'll continue to do that. Lastly, I don't think it's a sign of weakness allowing a concerned resident a little bit of extra time outside of our normal public communication rules to sort through something. I think that reflects the way that folks in town do business with each other. They treat each other as equals, and when you need a little bit more time, that's given. So I appreciate that happened tonight as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Santinella.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an announcement on Wednesday between 4 and 8, as part of the new plan of conservation and development, Enfield residents and businesses are invited to join the community planning open house, which is going to be here in council chambers to help discuss the future of the Thompsonville neighborhood. There will be some activities here for people to do and exercises to walk through to help with that effort. Mr. Young, I do want to respond to you. The out-of-state license plate registration issue is a huge problem, and it continues to get worse. This has been discussed before. We are having our subcommittee general finances meeting on Friday. It is on the agenda. I put it on the agenda because I am seeing this happen in my neighborhood. So here's the first public service announcement to people here and people who are watching. If you have a car garaged in Enfield, it needs to be registered in Connecticut, and you need to pay taxes to the town of Enfield. We can talk about the other tax assessor issues as we work through them, but people who are avoiding paying taxes in Enfield, it's just wrong. And you need to be accountable. You need to be a good citizen, just like the rest of us. We all pay our taxes on our vehicles, and so should everybody else. So I am telling you that I am prepared. I will be as aggressive as possible. It's just wrong to avoid paying taxes. Mr. Riley left. I do want to respond. I have not visited Mr. Riley. He is in my district, but I have spent hours on the phone with Mr. Riley and Mr. Oshafsky. I spoke with him just today. He's gone. But I will tell you that I told him I would come to whatever meetings that he needs me to go to. I will tell his attorney. I just said if we have to have a meeting, I would like to make sure that our counsel is available. I just can't put myself in that position. But I will do whatever I can to help Mr. Riley. I know he wants me to bring him a roast beef grinder from Corona's. He made it clear about that. I'm happy to do that too. But I'm willing to help however I can. And I feel like I have spent a substantial amount of time with him on the phone. I'll say my other comments as we get to things on the agenda. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to comment? All right, and then after you, then I will wrap it up.
All right, I'm going to make this quick. Councilor Ludwig, I don't think it's right that you're asking that, because I'm going to give you an example. When I was campaigning up at Fermi High School with Councilor Despard, our town manager then, Chris, went over, showed up, went right over to the Republican side, shook everybody's hands, took pictures with everybody, and never even came over and said hi to me or Matt, and he left. So that to me is also fitting in what you're saying. And I don't think it's right that we ask our manager to have to justify any places that she goes to or does anything. She has her right to do and visit your campaigns too. But I'm just saying is that you're asking her to justify an event that she goes to here in Enfield, and I hope you will go to the next Republican one to prove that you are just as equal as anybody else. And we can go back and forth, but I'd rather do this outside so we can get going
I will
here.
do it outside. And
Yeah. I don't mean that way. No, I don't mean it that way.
No,
I don't mean it that way. I meant we can I can discuss this later like that.
So I have a right to respond. No, I have a right to respond.
After you respond, then that's going to be it.
Listen, you're welcome to come to any Republican fundraiser we throw. But again, the point of the position, this is a council manager form of government. You work for all 10 of us, excuse me. Should be 11, okay? And when you show up to a fundraiser, that's different than showing up to an event and hugging people and saying whatever. Fundraiser is specific to a political event. So that's the difference. If you folks are okay with that, you're more than welcome to come to any Republican fundraiser and we will actually invite you. It's not right.
Okay, well, I think, first of all, Mike, you were a little out of line stating that, number one, okay? Number two, if you invite me to a Republican fundraiser, I'll attend, okay? Or your golf tournament that you have coming up, all right? Shoot me the invite.
You don't have to be nonpartisan. She's telling me it's different, Bob. Got two different
All right,
different
well,
positions.
okay. Well, I think that we've heard enough. We understand where you're coming from based on a lot of your comments tonight, okay? And I want us to move forward with this meeting. Getting back to Mr. Riley, just to let you know that I did have conversation with Mr. Oshafsky about what was going on. I would be glad to meet up. You know, if you shot me an email, I would have definitely responded. I will be visiting your area over there. I've been by it. I see it. I understand it. I've heard you, you know, and, but Wise Construction from Norwich, there are back and forth. We did give you that opportunity, or I gave you that opportunity to have that conversation with the town manager. I will take that responsibility. However, the back and forth should not be taking place. But we did give you that opportunity tonight. So I just wanted to state that.
I say something?
No, no.
Okay.
Yeah. But I just want to say that we are acknowledging your situation and your attorney here, okay? Mr. Young and Mr. Young, thank you for your comments here tonight. I guess the point that I really want to get at is, I know that with the random audit, I think audits, as far as I'm concerned with, are random. And I believe that it was stated in the letters that people received with personal property taxes that that there was an opportunity or a chance that people could get audited based on the information that they had received. But Mr. Young, thank you for your comments. Now, getting back to Mr. Janitis, Mr. Rob Znicki, and Mr. Ungary in regard to the D1, all right, the candidate, all right. If we go back to June, I asked if they would just kind of like hold off until I was here for the next particular meeting. We are going to be addressing the D1 candidate, whether it's Mr. Nasuda or another candidate. If Mr. Nasuda's name comes up, then we will entertain that, and I'm hoping that we can move forward with that by the next council meeting. All right, so that will be addressed. All right, so I'm just letting everybody know that the D1 candidate will be addressed for the next meeting, and I will be glad to meet with Ms. Ungary to discuss that. Okay? One other thing I just want to mention in regard to some good things that are working here, building together for the future. We have 92 Main Street, we have 9 North Main Street, we have the Thompsonville mixed-use transit-oriented development site. We have the train station, we have Opera House Players. There's a lot of development that's going on, along with a future pub of the old firehouse. Saturday, August 13th, the farmers market, I believe, is being moved from Sunday to Saturday to go along with the ERFC event with the backpack giveaway. So I just wanted to bring that out. I also had the opportunity, along with Councilor Santinella and with the town clerk and town manager, in attending the promotion of officer prior to detective. And I want to personally thank him for all the work that he's done down in the Thompsonville section while he was there for the last few years. And, especially with his last major arrest that he had, I want to thank him for everything that he has done in the Thompsonville, and we wish him the best in moving up to the detective slot. Another thing I just want, and Mr. and Mrs. Ungary are also at the event also. All right, thank you for reminding me. Also, I am disappointed in the owners of the Enfield Square for their lack of responsibility and taking their mall ownership seriously. I expect more from this mall ownership. Especially since we've been working with Capital Region of Council of Governments to conduct a traffic impact study to assist the mall owners in the future with the direction of, anything to reinvigorate that area. So action has been taken against them, and we will move forward with that. Also, I want to thank to everybody, and I just want to give a special shout out to Councilor Santinello and what time and effort that he did in putting together letters of support with the community grant fund application. We spent a lot of time doing that. The town manager going above and beyond, along with Nelson Tereso, to be part of that first go-round of applying for grant funds. And then the other thing that I do want to mention, and I know that it's, something that Councilor Ludwig did bring up, the rails to trail. And I know that in previous emails that the town manager will be getting back to you information in regard to that. Once again, I think that this is an issue that would cost the town $2 million or more for this particular project. And the main concern that we have there is the federal government taking control of fixing up that rail area for the possibility of bringing in, biodiesel fuel. And this is something that we had talked about with the last administration. So we will move forward in talking a little more about that. But there's another thing I just want to mention is, there was also a project that was put to bed with the Connecticut River Access Project. All right, the council originally wanted to move forward with that, and the last administration and the one before that put that project to bed also. So I just want to mention that, just moving forward. And one last good thing, that I did receive a letter from the Tina Costanzo just thanking the Senior Home Repair Program. And the program's a godsend for seniors, and she's proud to be an Enfield resident to brag to fellow out-of-towners about the services Enfield offers to their older residents that other towns don't. And it was a nice letter that was sent to Cindy Guerreri and for Tim Slade and all of his work that he does with the program. And that's all I have to say. Okay? Thank you. Yeah.
Gary, I'm sorry if I gave you wrong information. Sounds like Abbey Road sidewalks wasn't included, which I have to admit is news to me. So can we have Donald put together a recap? Because it was part of the referendum. I don't know what happened. So I don't want to give you wrong information, so I apologize. We'll get back to you on that, okay? Sorry about that. I don't want to give you the wrong information. But it was originally part of the referendum, and if it got taken out, I have to admit I don't remember it. But we'll get back to you on that. So I apologize.
Okay, thanks. All right, town manager report.
There's a lot to cover tonight, and it is late, so I'm going to try to triage this so that we cover everything that I think is important for tonight. I'm going to start with just some quick updates. Good news from social services in terms of our budgets. They have been awarded their one-year extension for drug-free community grants. That's $125,000. And also the LEGO grant came through for this year for our family resource centers, which is another $100,000. Also, good news, there was a little bit of a bidding war during the foreclosure sale at Debbie Lane, and the sale price was $60,500, which means that the town is going to recoup the majority of its taxes, liens, property maintenance liens, and everything else associated with that. But even the better news is that that property is now in the hands of someone who is going to either tear it down or rehab it, but we won't have that absentee owner issue anymore. So again, wheels of code enforcement move slowly, but eventually, we're trying to work on all of these properties that are on the troubled list. I do have a meeting on Wednesday with Verigy, which is the solar company that has proposed the array at North Street. They are coming in probably to look for a tax stabilization agreement, and some other issues. So I will try to get as much information about the status there as possible. And in conjunction with the conversation that occurred earlier, I will again contact PURA to have them reinforce what, in fact, we as the town of Enfield have as municipal rights regarding injunctions or any other type of public hearings. And just to make sure that I understood correctly, based on what has happened to date, that we currently do not have recourse, but I will double check and I will send that out. The mayor covered the mall. We are waiting for them to confirm fire suppression. We have finished the work that we've contracted to do, and we are in the process of leaning them. The communication with this ownership group is poor at best, and so we are hoping that these actions, which were very proactive, but also once you're aware of a risk and liability, you have to take action. The upper portion of that wooden enclosure was at risk because of the floor falling out and into the ceiling below. That wooden enclosure was now at risk of coming over onto the sidewalk. So as you could tell, Public Works at first blocked it off so that there wasn't egress, and then when we didn't get a response, we went in and actually completed the work and created the fire safety wall per the specifications of the fire marshal. Those are worst case scenarios, but as I communicated in my last report to you last week, it could have been worse. We could have actually done the nuclear option, as our Public Works Director likes to say, and we could have closed the mall based on the fire suppression issues. We did not want to do that to the businesses and the entities that are in the mall, so we are hoping that this gets the attention of them. I will also say that it was quite concerning to be there on site last week and to actually walk around that Macy's section and actually see that they're also a candidate for property maintenance with the tall weeds that are literally growing into the entrances of what was that store. So we're going to try to get that back on track. The independent review for the assessors, those packets are here for you tonight. There were 3 respondents. 2 appear to be sole practitioners, and 1 is the firm that many of you have already interacted with. We would like you to review that. We would like you to also, as soon as possible, reach out to either us or to Cheryl directly and let her know your availability for next week, because we'd like to schedule those interviews. 2 of the attorneys already responded today, from what I understand, that they are generally available on the dates that we have asked, and we are waiting for that 3rd to respond as well. So once that gets underway, the next piece of all of this can happen. Let's see. In terms of the premium pay for critical workers that Councilor Despard brought up, I think that it would be really important for us to pair that with a bunch of the other information that's flowing from the state and federal government, including the My Home CT program, where people can actually get financial assistance if they've run into COVID-related employment issues, being laid off, and are having difficulty with housing financial issues. So there's a lot that we can do to educate our Enfield residents about all of these programs that are available to them. Kind of thematically connected to that is the fact that at a future council meeting, maybe even the August 29th one, I am going to put forward a proposal for you to consider hiring a contractual grant writer to help with all of this. There's pools of money everywhere. I'm very concerned that because of all of the other issues happening, that we are not going to be able to capture that fair share of those relevant funds that would be applicable to existing projects, proposed projects, or frankly, infrastructure and everything else. There's over $400 trillion from the federal government that was put through this last infrastructure bill. And Mark Boughton is in charge of it through the Department of Revenue Services. He is a former mayor of Danbury. He is extremely well versed with how all of this is working, and he is working to get those dollars into our hands. However, there are pieces that we have to do in order to be compliant and be eligible. And I just don't think that we are deep enough on the staff level in order to do that. So that could be paid for with ARPA funds. It wouldn't be a bottom line issue, but it's something that I think we need to consider. And if that needs to go somewhere first, like general government and finance or somewhere, let's just make sure it gets on an agenda, because I think the more time we wait, the more we're at a position where this isn't the only municipality that's going to be thinking about this. There's only so many grant writers, and I think that we really need to be in a position to get one who can do the best that they can for the town. Senior Tax Relief Task Force is probably going to be maybe the beginning of September we're going to start. That work needs to coincide with your next budget process so that there's a recommendation that you will take into the budget process about what that affordability is, what it would look like, and whether it's something that you want to consider. So that's coming up, as is the discussion that the community needs to have and the town council needs to have on a fair rent commission, because that is a new piece of state legislation also that went into effect. So I've tasked our social services director, Cindy Guerreri, to look into that, and we're also working with Capital Region because they may look to do a regional fair rent commission as well. So those are things that are going to be coming up. Next meeting also, I'd like to put forward, in addition to the grant writer, there are some, it's called ClearGov. There's some additional transparency pieces that we could do to enhance our website, especially around ARPA funding, ARPA projects, and our overall town budget. Several of us sat through one of the demos last week, and there's 3 different pieces of it that I'd like to bring forward to you. Again, could also be ARPA funded from the pool that's left. I've circulated to a couple of people some of the out-of-state plate policy issues that our assessor has sent over in terms of things to be considered. There's a lot to be considered. It's a difficult issue. As a border town, you are hit more so than other people. There's also the return on investment issue, is the actual amount of money that actually flows into the budget is relatively small compared to the outlay of what you would be doing for the company that you would need. The other consideration is, with the very heated environment that is currently here, do you really want to send the assessor's office or the representatives out into neighborhoods, onto people's driveways to be taking license plates? I think that's a very real issue right now that you should probably, think about in terms of how that gets rolled out. We also have the Rails to Trails update quickly. I did meet with the first selectman of East Windsor this morning. We walked a portion of the trail. Portion of the trail included washed out sections of about 20 feet deep, unrepaired rail pieces, unconnected pieces. I'm not sure how operable it can be in the future. I think that there's a lot of answers that I need to get from the Federal Railroad Administration as well as from the state DOT, and I have made those inquiries. In terms of the lease, it's a very interesting story. There's one person in the state who's actually known as the railroad guy, and he owns and has that access. From what I can understand and what the first selectman was able to confirm, it was a 25-year lease. And every time there's a crossing or anything that goes on with that, there is a revenue generation piece for that. First Selectman Bowswet believes that there might have been a 1-year renewal on that, and that might be a 1 year, every year renewal. So he's looking into it. He gave me a name of someone to call, so we're going to track that down as well. So in terms of the contract, that's a piece that is kind of integral to the future conversation. The Economic Development Commission is also going to be here on August 29th. They are going to present to you a draft in advance of that meeting of what they're looking to do for our small business development grant opportunities for small businesses. I know that we've had a couple of council members. I know that Councilman Santinello was at one of the last meetings. They're creating these parameters. I think that the parameters are also the type that are going to be able to be tweaked for the social services side as well. So if you recall in the budget, there's $250,000 set aside from ARPA for small businesses. There's $200,000 set aside for social services and nonprofits. So that's moving along, and I'd like to be able to launch that in probably September as well. And I think the commission wants the applications back by the end of October is what the proposal is. In terms of the disabled veteran who came and had his exemption applied to his house instead of his car, as you recall with Mr. Hendrickson, it is a choice, and it is something that the veteran has to voice to the assessor's office, and not just Enfield, but in any town. The gentleman that was here tonight, I don't think he's still here. Oh, okay. He can change it. This is not a dead end. He can go tomorrow and say, I want this applied to my cars and not my house. He would then have to go through the process of signing a piece of paper, asking for a refund, and then having it redone, but it can be done. So if anybody can reach out and let him know that, I think it would be important to know. This is also one of those pieces that it's best practice and what is told to assessors. You always assign the exemptions to the higher level value. That is always the house. It is incumbent upon the veterans or those in the disabled community who receive these exemptions to come in and voice what they want happen to their exemption to the assessor, and that's when the change is made. So in terms of process and procedures, Sheila Bailey, the town clerk, sees a lot of the DD 214s that come in. And at that point, in other communities, including ones that she and I have worked in, there is a checkbox form where it gets checked off, house or cars, and that gets transmitted to the assessor and the tax collector. Those offices never see the veterans' information. Those documents are kept privately, and they're in the town clerk's office. So that is one option that we can do in terms of improving communication and options, is using those forms that other towns do so that veterans self-choose where they want those exemptions applied, and then that is transported over to that office. So I think I've covered, well, actually, thank you to the town council, because I was not aware the farmers market moved to Saturday, so we're going to have to do some changes on our schedules to that, but that sounds like a great pairing. Tonight you're talking about the referendum, and I just want to remind everyone that the deadline to get that to the town clerk's office is September 8th, so that's why it's scheduled for tonight, and that's why it's bouncing for a public hearing to the 29th. There was a lot of information brought forward in public comment, and I'll just do 30-second review. The PAR reports to Mr. Young, we are still doing them, but because of vacations and changeover in the office of the town manager with new administrative staff, we opted to do one at the end of the summer to kind of cover the whole summer, and then we'll go back to our regular schedule of when they usually come out and attach to the... Yeah. Oh, no, they're there.
Where are they? That's why I couldn't find.
They're attached and hyperlinked into the agenda, but I can get you copies. Let's see, fire district taxes. It's my understanding that North Thompsonville was the only one that did the zero on the motor vehicle, and we are having conversations about consolidation and all that entails in order to address a lot of the issues that you succinctly identified. I can talk to you more about that. We cannot find a vendor for Shred It Day. We thought we had one set up, and they weren't available, but we are still looking to do that. We had hoped to schedule it for Earth Day in April, like it's been in the past. They've canceled, and we've not found another vendor yet, so we will continue to work on that. And then in terms of the personal property process, we did move to use Barron, and I think we had previously used Feldman. There is a difference with how these appraisals are done, but I did want to, before giving you the full report and answering a lot of the questions that were made tonight, personal property declaration forms are not FOIable. They are not public. You could walk in and ask for ABC Company's personal property declaration tomorrow, and you will not be able to receive it because they are not anything that's disclosable. Most of the information that my recollection from my past life of random audits is they ask for the types of information that's asked for on your federal tax return. I am not familiar with a trial balance or why that would be asked for, and I'm going to confirm all of this with the town assessor and tax collector tomorrow, but I do know that he has assured me in past conversations that there is no commission that is paid with this particular vendor. And in fact, the last conversation we had, he told me that 2 of the audits had already come back showing that most likely those 2 businesses were going to be lowered. I do not know how he chose them. I think it's a random mix of like a sorting document where you just come up with them. There's usually X number that you choose. In my previous job, we used to pull them out of a hat just to be completely transparent so that everybody went in, and then we picked out, I think it was 20 in Bristol that got randomly audited. And as you can tell from Mr. Brennan, he's been in business here for 37 years. This is the first time that he's been chosen. That's kind of how it often goes, runs the gamut. There is never any, let's see, I think Mr. Finger's auto repair place, I think I'm going to pick him this year. That's not how that works. It's a randomly generated based on personal property returns. So I will do a full report to you based on that. And the 4th of July, I sent out that spreadsheet because being new here, I was curious about how the community events and celebrations budget worked because it wasn't very clear in the budget. So basically what happens, from what I can tell, is there's an $85,000 line item, and that incorporates not just the 4th of July town celebration, but there's 3 or 4 other events loaded in there. So my concern is that because that event hadn't happened for 2 years, that a lot of those labor prices were based on 2019. So that's pretty much why you've seen the bump. But it was also explained to me that the reason that that line item exists is that those departments then charge that overtime to so that their budget doesn't see that spike. It wasn't the overtime that was the concern. The concern for me was the straight time and the fact that we have our public works divisions, many of them, building and grounds, custodial, highway guys were out there working over 600 man hours for that event, when in fact we had all kinds of other demands on our time. So it becomes an issue of how do we continue to support a really important community event, but lower the input for the Public Works Department during their high season. And I will tell you that one of the reasons that this came to light was the Thursday before. We had some graffiti in parks, and it wasn't the nice kind of graffiti, and it wasn't the kind of graffiti that you want small children to see. And when I called and said, we need to take care of this at X Park and Y Park, I was told, I'm sorry, I have all 17 guys on the town green. So that's what made me look at the hours, at the straight time, at the overtime. And when we're in such a difficult personnel situation already, and those mostly men are coming out of the high school graduation right into 4th of July with all of these other tasks that are really important to the town in terms of upkeep, beautification, aesthetics, mowing, litter control, everything else. I think it's time to take a moment to say, what else can we do to support the 4th of July committee? What other supports can they look for? What's important? What can be opportunity costed? And what can we do differently? And that was the purpose of my putting together that spreadsheet. Because what's going to happen is that money's rolling forward. So we're going to pay those bills, but now it means that those other 3 events that come after, including 2 veterans events, have less of a pool, which means you're going to be faced with probably by the second quarter talking about transferring money in to make sure that those other events get taken care of. And I think that's just part of the transparency and the financial accountability that all of you need to understand. Abbey Road was a topic tonight, and I don't know if this is going to be good news or bad news, but we are adding a 4-way stop at Clinton at Taft because of that very, very old sugar maple that someone had suggested that we cut down in order to create a sight line. I do not think we should be cutting down almost 400-year-old sugar maples that are beautiful and healthy, as well as a sycamore that's right next to it. But because it has been brought to our attention and it is a sight line, the only way that we can fix that problem is by creating a 4-way stop there. Public Works is also cutting back some of the brush in that right-of-way, and hopefully that solves the problem. So it will be another 4-way stop on Abbey Road. It is a long road. This is a traffic pandemic. Issues have increased. The pandemic really, with people out driving more, we've seen it everywhere. Every town is complaining about speeding issues. But I will tell you quickly that I listen to the police radio in my office when I'm here in town, and I am so impressed with the way the police department handles traffic. They're actually pulling people over. They're issuing tickets. They're doing all kinds of interaction from a traffic standpoint that I've not seen in previous towns. And so I think it becomes a supply and demand issue. Where do you want them? How do we assign them? Where is the highest and best use? And if we are clustering them in certain areas, it tends to work for a little bit, and then you move them around. Councilman Finger's been obviously a proponent of the solar RRVM signs, and we're obviously going to look at those, but as you're going to hear probably in a report, there's some issues right now. So that was traffic concerns. And then I guess the last thing I would say in terms of Congressman Courtney, I've been a supporter and donor to him for years. Prior to becoming mayor, I was the director of government relations and communications at the Connecticut Pharmacists Association. And Congressman Courtney, although not my congressman, was one of the leading proponents of pharmacy issues, whether it was PBMs or the Medicare donut holes, or whether it was insurance for the Trident employees down at the base. he was extremely responsive, and I appreciate that in an elected official, regardless of whether they're a D, an R, a libertarian, or anyone else. So I have always donated to him. I will continue to donate to him, and I was personally invited by Pat Tellerita to come to the firehouse on Saturday. Being in town anyway for Mount Carmel, I did go. And I will continue to go to support anyone who I think is supporting my goals. My goals here in Enfield are tied very closely to Congressman Courtney. And what he has done in the short time that I've been here, moving things and ensuring things that are here keep moving, including the train platform, which I know has been in the works for years, is really impressive. He's a wonderful congressman, and we're lucky to have him. From a Democratic standpoint, they're in power. So, in fact, if you look at my phone right now at 7:30, Susan Beisowitz called me. We've been friends for 25 years. I have Ned Lamont's cell phone number in my phone. I can call Chris Murphy right now on his personal cell phone if you need something. All of these things are really beneficial for Enfield. So regardless of the actual letter that follows my name, I'm happy to use any resources that are available to me, including some of my Republican friends who I've worked with over the years, in order to do what's best for this town. But most importantly, it's making sure that Enfield's on everybody else's radar, especially with the amount of money coming through. So I think you dance with the people who brought you to the dance, and you hope that you get a good song. So that would be my response to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, one thing. Through to you, real quick, I promise.
Councilor Fanger.
Through you to him, make sure we get those signs changed, the farmers market signs changed. The ones I know, you just found out about this, because they say open every Sunday. So we got to get those changed to that date. That was it.
Okay, thank you.
Could I?
Councilor Mangini, go ahead, and then Councilor Ludwig.
Thank you. Through our mayor to our town manager, Alan, what I would ask of you, and I'm sure you've already thought of this, is to have a conversation with the 4th of July committee, in particular Scott Copen, to find out how we can get through some of the issues. Certainly, we haven't had a 4th of July celebration for a couple of years due to COVID, but I'm sure that the 4th of July committee, management, or, team would be able to address some of the issues that you have. And, maybe we can, work through all that. So one of the liaisons to the committee, please let me know if there's something I can do to facilitate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Councilor Ludwig.
And so two things. Also, the Crumbling Foundation, I know we don't have a ton in Enfield, but the law changed, I believe, a few years ago, their statute, where they need a CO if they had a special assessment because of the Crumbling Foundation. Can we take a report and see if we have the CO of any that are ongoing right now? I know there's a few, and if they're assessed properly? I believe the law was changed a few years ago, so can we get a report on that? And if they are getting assessed wrong, then that needs to be changed. And then two, I'm going to leave it, but I disagree with your assessment. You're supposed to be a nonpartisan individual, and you gave a pretty partisan speech just a minute ago, which is fine, but I'm just going on record, I don't agree this is what the council manager form of government supposed to be run. So I just want to get that on the record. Thank you.
Okay, moving forward with item 10, report of special committees of the council. I believe we have a couple tonight. First, Public Safety Subcommittee, Councilor Despard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we had a public safety meeting last week to discuss two items, one of them being going out to referendum for a new public safety complex, and the other one being the moving of a solar sidewalk from the former Nathan Hale School over to the middle school. So on the first item, the committee unanimously supported going forward with the referendum for November, and there is a resolution later in our packet to set a public hearing. So there will be certainly more time to discuss this as a council and with the public, but the feeling was that we have some pretty some of the best chiefs in the business in Chief Fox and Chief Riggett, and they've been doing wonderful work with less than ideal conditions for a while now. We sort of owe this to our public safety to give this another look. In terms of the solar sidewalk, Councilman Finger had asked, was a really great idea to have the one over at Nathan Hale moved to JFK. For people that aren't familiar with the solar sidewalk, they're these sidewalks, and they have these rectangular, rapid flashing beacons. They people yield to these things way more frequently than they do regular crosswalks. So they're more effective, and they're pretty cost effective as well. But unfortunately, that particular advice, due to its age and the what it was meant for, the traffic it was meant for in that area, it's not going to be able to be moved to JFK, because the second it was moved, it would have to meet a different code, and at that point you have to make modifications to it, and those modifications would be too expensive. So it's going to stay where it is for now, which it still does have some use. There is a community garden there and a park there that is used. So. Yeah, that's that. Councilman Finger or Councilman Ungeyer, if there's anything I'm missing, please feel free to chime in. Okay, great.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, DPW, Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Finger and Councilman Ludwig and I met to cover a couple issues regarding the DPW committee. In particular, Water Pollution Control Authority. The council's role in this historically has been to meet once a year and to talk about matters pertaining to this huge system. One of the most, the biggest bits of infrastructure that we engage with as residents of the town. So the discussion is to create some kind of subcommittee to handle these issues and do three things. One, to look at the finances of the system, report back to the council on at least a quarterly basis, in my opinion. Two, to have some kind of venue for people who have kind of miscellaneous sewer fee issues to come before that body, state their business, and then have a recommendation go to the council. Three, to have a venue for the Director of Public Works to come and talk about future infrastructure needs. I think that those things are really important. The council, these are currently responsibilities of the council. I think it might be more efficient to do it that way. I do also recognize Councilman Ludwig's concerns about not seating important tax authority. It's the council's authority. I think we should personally keep that. But that was a discussion. If folks in the community have opinions about this, please feel free to reach out. This has not been done yet. It's being formed. Secondly, Councilor Finger's suggestion was to bring back oil and battery dump days. Originally, this would happen twice a year. People could bring in their car batteries and could bring in their waste oil. Town would take that so that folks, didn't get frustrated and maybe dump it in a way that they shouldn't be. I think that's an important thing to do. I'm glad we're exploring bringing back one of those events once a year to see what the appetite is. I think it's very important for our local environment. And please let me know if I missed anything, Councilor.
Yeah, it used to be once every month. Apologies. It used to be every month, with the exception of winter holidays. So now we're going to try doing it as a test coming up in the fall, I think. I'm hoping Donald will arrange that and see how it goes. I mean, that was a great service to the town. Because every time you go to an auto parts store, there's a sign, I got pictures of them, oil tank filled, so you can't even bring it there. And I tell you, it's needed. It doesn't cost a lot. It's fine. So I'm okay.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is that, again, we met numerous times in water pollution control. You can go take a look how many times we met. We met more than once a year. We met multiple times a year. So certainly over the last 4 years. And again, it's any counselor can call for a meeting and discuss anything they want. So it's there if you choose to do it. And again, I'm against any committee where we give away our taxing authority. It's not the right thing to do. If you want to have a subcommittee, I'm willing to listen, but not any. I want to be clear. I'm not for giving away our taxing authority. But I think, again, there was a presentation out on the former manager's website, and it was very detailed from soup to nuts on the sewer fee. And to remind people, the reason why you have a fee, because we have a $40 million loan that we got from the state and federal government that allowed us to fix the building, because we were going to get threatened to be fined $1 million a day from the EPA because we were so far behind many years ago. So this dates many years. And there's reasons why it had to happen. And unfortunately, because we took a no-interest loan, or a very low interest loan, to be able to fix the building and bring it up to the good shape that it is now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Hopkins, for your report from DPW. Item 11, unfinished business, there is none. Let's move onward to 12, consent agenda. Item 1, discussion resolution authorizes transfer of ESSER 2 funds awarded from the State Department of Education to the Family Resource Center of $25,000. All in favor of this one item that's on the consent agenda? Yay? Aye. Aye. Any nays, any abstentions? Okay. Resolution passes 10 in favor, 10 yays. Okay, next, appointment, town council appointments. One on the Ethics Commission. There are two appointments tonight. One is the Ethics Commission, and the other one will be the Hazardville Water Company Advisory Council Enfield representative. The first one, the term of the Ethics Commission, term of office of Jennifer Bukowski, expired 10/31/2021. Replacement of Sherry Reddick would be until 10/31/2023. Is there a motion to nominate Sherry Reddick?
Motion.
Deputy Mayor Sakala, and a second?
Second.
Councilor Despard? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 10 in favor. Motion carries 10-0. Item number 2, is there a motion to nominate Stephen Lemoyne until 1/1/2024? Is there a motion to nominate?
Motion to nominate.
Okay, Councilor Pisner, and a second, Councilor Ungary. All in favor? Aye. 10 in favor, 0 against, motion carries 10-0. Item, yeah.
Can I ask why we are not going to put up the vacancy for inland wetlands?
It's being, there is no action on item 3 at this point.
Why?
Is it taken off?
We have an application, he's a current member of the committee. We're just
Well-
moving from a part-time to a full-time.
We are going to be doing that on the next one, August 29th.
But we have his application here today.
Correct, and we stated that we were going to be, there is no action on it. Okay? We're going to move onward to C, appointments, town manager appointed, council approved, none. D, appointments, P&Z Commission appointed, council approved, none. We will move on to item E, discussion resolution to approve a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with ASME Local 1029. Councilor Finger.
Yes, good evening. This is to the town manager and the rest of the councilors, myself, concerning the local contract for 1029. As required by Section 2-128 of the Town of Enfield Ethics Ordinance, I am making a written statement, which I'm speaking tonight, that to be placed on file. I am excusing myself from the ratification vote on the 1029 contract in accordance with requirements of the Ethics Ordinance, Section 2-128K, because I am a member of this union almost 40 years and have a financial interest. This statement is on file, will be on file with the town clerk. I will hand it to her now, and I ask that it be included in the minutes of the meeting tonight. Signed, myself, Enfield Town Council at large. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Finger. Be it resolved that the Enfield Town Council does hereby approve the 3-year collective bargaining agreement between the Town of Enfield and the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, ASME Local 1029, dated July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. Date prepared July 15th, 2022. Prepared by Steve Belinda.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor Sakala, and a second by Councilor Mangini. Any discussion? Yes. Councilor Pisner.
Okay, I am not against this contract in any way, shape, or form, but this is the first time I'm seeing it. And I think this is a very important piece of our job because we are the fiduciary responsibility for the town. So, I mean, I went to the town hall Friday and I asked them to print it out so that I could have a hard copy and I could go through it and look at it so that I would know what I'm saying yes to tonight. I don't understand. This is what I was saying before. Things are handed to us, and we're supposed to just say yes. This should have had we should have had some kind of an executive session on this. We should have gone through this. And again, I am not against it. But you can't just say, okay, here it is. I mean, look at the size of this. So I will abstain from this vote because I don't know what I'm voting on tonight.
Is there any other comments? Councilor Ludwig.
If you could, the Director of Human Resources, give a detailed report to the public. Again, we haven't had a executive session on this, I think, in 6-7 months. I don't even remember what we were negotiating. And so the public needs to understand exactly how much they're going to be paying here. And I agree with Councilor Pisner. I support this because they do a great job. But I can't vote for this. It's the first time I've seen the contract, and now we have to vote on it. And they've already voted on it. Usually we negotiate and we have an idea what they are going to vote on before it comes understanding what the union's going to vote for. Then it comes to us. We didn't even know they were having a vote. So could you give the public how much it's going to cost the taxpayers, all the detail, including, I believe, if I'm using the wrong term, the sitting time, if I'm using that correctly, or the time that, the waiting time that they'll get paid. It's a bump, I believe, as well, if I read through it was one of the cross-out. Mm-hmm. We need a summary exactly what is changing in the contract. It should be public information. Go right ahead.
Good evening. So I was, and I apologize that we didn't have an executive session for this. I have no problem doing that. I'm very proud of this contract, and I'm not trying to be evasive. I was following the same pattern we did with the professional and technical union, which we did not have an executive session, and it was unanimously approved. We
had plenty in advance. That's not true. We had plenty.
Excuse
the
me,
record
Councilor
shows
Ludwig,
that it was voted on.
Could you let him please?
The record shows it was voted on unanimously without an executive session. And I didn't hear this feedback then. But I have no problem having an executive session for any contract and being totally transparent. This contract, according to, I think, the ordinance, was posted at the town clerk's website for over 30 days, so the public had a chance to see it. It was posted on the town HR website for over 30 days. I think it was after June 25th, after that was ratified. I did post it pursuant to the practice that I've been following here for the last 12 and a half years to publicly post this contract. And since you asked, I will say this contract it's in line exactly with the COLAs that we're giving to the professional and technical union. It was the cost of this contract over 3 years is $788,000 and $216. A 3%, and a 3.25%. And we also did something for the mechanics who, during the negotiations, were worried about losing skilled labor to the market rate. The market is paying more than that, so we had addressed that need, and we listened to what they had to do, and that's why we gave them an incentive to get a little bit more an hour for every time they got a certification, which benefits the town. The more certification, the more training they get, the return we get in our investment. Other highlights, as you pointed out, was something called, let me just get it right here. We did add something for the hazard equipment. Where is it?
I would like to vote for this. Can this wait till August meeting, since we have 20 days, so we can get at least a summary of what was changed? I want to vote for this, but I can't vote for it tonight.
Go ahead. Deputy Mayor Sakala.
Thank you, Steve. No, I think we have to vote for it tonight. And with all due respect, we had this packet on Friday. If you had questions on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or today, you could have emailed. But no, you wait till you're here to now put them on the spot, or whatever it is you're doing. Ask your questions. Nobody has a problem with that. But if you have them ahead of time, give them to the town manager's office ahead of time. We would have avoided all of this. We're ready to vote.
We will be moving
Just to answer, the
forward
standby
in
pay
voting.
did go from 150 to 250 per week.
Can you explain that?
Because we had a hard time getting people to volunteer for that, so we had to increase it by $100 to make sure we had a pool of people that would want to participate in that.
Mayor, may I say a comment?
Just hold on, Councilor Ungary, and then you.
I'm just asking if we can table this until the next meeting so we can get a copy of this. I haven't read through all of this either.
No, we're not going to be tabling it. Councilor Mangini.
Thank you. I think at this point, we need to get out of the weeds. We need to let the town do their job, which they've done very successfully. We've heard from a union person come forward, Ms. Ellis, who has very clearly stated that the union has agreed to this agreement with the town. And, if going forward, we don't need to be tabling this. This is just adding more layers to more, bureaucracy, because we really need to go forward and, support what the town has done in good faith and worked with the union to come up with a good, contract. So I think, again, we do need to go forward. There's no reason to table it. Our deputy mayor said very nicely that if there were any questions, they should have been brought forward prior to this meeting. This is ridiculous. Let's go forward and let's get out of the weeds.
Mr. Mayor, may I answer one thing here?
Yes.
The state statute has addressed situations such as this, that there's a certain time frame. If the town council does not vote it up or down, it becomes a contract automatically. So if we do postpone this, it will become a contract if you guys don't take a vote on it.
Well, we're not going to be postponing it, but Councilor Despard.
Yeah, I'm going to happily vote for this. It's been a public document for 30 days. Anyone that wanted to read it, it was posted online. It's nobody's fault, but whoever didn't read it's fault. So I will happily be voting for this tonight.
Yeah, and I'm going to make one final comment in regard to this. In our packet, right above the resolution that I just read, gave it a bullet highlight of the contract. I thank a teacher every day because I know how to read. So to say that, the information's not there in front of us, come on, enough's enough. We're going to be moving forward with this. And Sheila, can we have roll call, please?
Counselor Pisner.
Abstain.
Counselor Santinella.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
Abstain.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Despard.
4.
Counselor Finger is abstaining. Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
Abstain.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
That's 6 in favor and none against and 4 abstentions.
Item F, discussion resolution to set a public hearing on the proposed voting district changes and set it down for a public hearing on 8/29/2022. Do I have a motion to approve setting the public hearing on the proposed voting district changes and set it for August 29th, 2022?
So moved.
Councilor Pisner, and a second by Councilor Mangini. Any discussion on this? This is just to set a public hearing. Sheila, roll call, please.
Counselor Pisner.
4.
Counselor Santinella.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Despard.
4.
Counselor Finger.
4.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Item G, discussing the resolution accepting a land donation to be used for parking at Hazardville Institute following the positive 824 approval from Planning and Zoning Commission. Be it resolved that the Enfield Town Council does hereby accept the land donation of a portion of 10 North Maple Street for the use of a parking plan at the Hazardville Institute, and to refer the matter to the town attorney for review and final action. Date prepared August 8, 2022, prepared by Ellen Zapusasu, the town manager. Any
So moved.
Councilor Mangini.
Second.
And Deputy Mayor Sakala. Any discussion or, okay, Sheila, roll call, please.
Counselor Pisner.
4.
Counselor Santinella.
4.
Counselor Ungary. 4. Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Despard.
4.
Counselor Finger.
4.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Item H, discussion resolution to approve the engagement letter for the retention of Pullman and Conley to handle the tax sales. Whereas the town of Enfield is seeking to sell properties on the delinquent tax list via tax sale in the next few months, whereas this letter of engagement has been reviewed by the town attorney, and whereas there is no budget impact, and that firm will receive a percentage of tax funds collected. Therefore, it be resolved that the town council authorize the town manager to sign the engagement letter with Pullman and Conley for the assignment of these properties to recoup tax dollars and liens on behalf of the town of Enfield.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor Sakala
Second.
and Councilor Mangini. Okay. Any discussion on this? Yes.
Just curious, is this a different law firm than we used before to do this? Is this different? I thought we had, do we have a different law firm when we did this? Just curious.
I'm not sure, but I can find out for you.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Pisner.
4.
Counselor Santinella.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Despard.
4.
Counselor Finger.
4.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Item I, discussing resolution, the resolution to authorize the town to enter into an agreement with AEV for refurbishment of 2 ambulances. Now therefore be resolved that the town manager is authorized to sign the AEV modular work order customer content form committing the town to refurbish an ambulance on a 2023 model Dodge 4500 chassis. In the event of an increase in the cost of the chassis, an additional appropriation may be required. Be it further resolved that the town manager is authorized to sign the AEV modular work order customer content form committing the town to refurbishing an ambulance on the 2024 model Dodge 4500 chassis. The refurbishing of this vehicle will not take place prior to the fiscal year 2024 and will be budgeted in the fiscal year 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Mangini and the second Deputy Mayor Sakala. Any discussion? I didn't know if Chief Riggett is on. Oh, she is.
Yep.
Would you like to make a couple of comments, Chief?
Hi, it's Erin Riggett. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Great. Hi. So acquiring vehicles has been extremely difficult. You likely have heard this with personal vehicles. Ambulances, the same issue. So the way the system is working now is you agree to move forward with the remount and you go into line to get the chassis. Now the chassis wait times are 12 to 18 months. And unfortunately, the 2023 Dodge chassis price isn't available. We know the cost of the ambulance remount is $178, $188, with the exception of that one piece, the Dodge chassis. A 2022 chassis was about $62,000. We expect it to increase a little bit. We're trying to plan forward for 2024, so we're in line ahead of everybody else. So that 12 to 18 month window doesn't turn into 18 to 24 or 24 to 30. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Councilor Ludwig?
I don't know if this is a question for Chief Riggett. Just curious, so we are leasing, correct?
Yes, they are leases.
All right, so because I thought we were moving over, because we're struggling with the leases package, that we're going more to purchase. So we're going to lease these? You think we'll be able to get the, sorry, go ahead. Yep.
Yep, these would be leased, or at least this one is leased. Obviously, the one in 2024 still needs to go through the budget process. The total lease cost is $218.
Right.
That's with the stretcher components.
Yep.
And we know that it'll probably go up a couple thousand because of the chassis cost increase.
And it's leased for 5 years, so we'll have that for 5 years. Then can we turn
That's correct.
turn it in for a better one at the same cost? Yeah.
It's a lease to own.
Yeah, got it. All right.
It would be to,
Yeah, fair. Thank
phase it
you.
out in about 7 years.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief Riggett.
Thank you.
Yep. Councilor Santinella.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Chief Riggett, we had an opportunity to be together at the fire chiefs meeting, and none of us like to see an ambulance in our driveway, but I thought I'd ask you to share some good news about a special delivery that you guys had in the last week or so.
Oh, sure. About a week and a half ago, crews were called to a female resident in labor. While they were on their way to Hartford Hospital, they did pull over and deliver a healthy baby girl in the back of one of our ambulances. It was a very smooth delivery, a successful delivery. Thanks. Hartford Hospital came and acknowledged our staff. It was Tyler Barth, Amani Wallace, and Stephen Adams. These things don't happen very often, but once in a while, sometimes, once in a career, you'll get a little guy or a little girl who likes to make an unexpected appearance. So we were happy for that crew. It was a good day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Riggett, for that great news. Thank you for Councilor Santinella to bring that up. That's fantastic, and kudos to the crew that took care of that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Item J, discussion resolution. Oh, excuse me. I'm moving right. Okay. Sheila, roll call. I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Councilor Pisner.
4.
Councilor Santinella.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crisati.
4.
Councilor Despard.
4.
Councilor Finger.
4.
Councilor Hopkins.
4.
Councilor Ludwig.
4.
And Councilor Mangini. That's 10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Okay, item J, discussion resolution. The resolution to set a public hearing to discuss a public safety referendum to construct a public safety complex. Whereas the town has acquired property adjacent to the Enfield Public Safety Complex, and whereas the Enfield Town Council wishes to construct an addition to the existing complex to house the Enfield Emergency Medical Services, upgrade the Enfield Police Department, and allow space for a regional state-of-the-art training center. And whereas the Enfield Town Council wishes to provide funding for this addition, and whereas the Town Council would like the public's input on the project. Now therefore be resolved that the Enfield Town Council does hereby schedule a public hearing to be held on August 29, 2022 at 6:45 p.m. in the Enfield Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, in order to allow public comment on the proposed public safety complex addition, date prepared August 8, 2022, prepared by the Town Manager's Office.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor Sakala, and second, Councilor Mangini. Any discussion on any of this? It's just for a public hearing. Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, something very similar to this was previously voted down in a referendum. There are compelling public interest needs for this. I think it's really important that it goes back to the public to consider because it is in the public's hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ludwig.
So have we re-promoted the plan? I mean, it's been, we did 4 or 5 months last year where we promoted all this before we voted to put it to referendum. We have 2 weeks of August. So last year we were going to use 2.5 million of ARPA funds now, which I don't think are available anymore. And do we have it in writing that that money's still available from the state of Connecticut? And we actually reached out to bond counsel. We did a ton of pre-work by the time we even got to the public hearing, so people knew what they could ask questions on. Is this going to be made public in the next, this week, so people can see what may or may not be on a referendum? I think Councilor Hopkins noted that they voted down, and yet is there anything made public to remind them what was part of that? And then what are we going to do with the 2.5 million that I don't believe is available with ARPA funds anymore? So these are legitimate questions before we go to, and I'm all for the projects. I think it's a great project. However, we're rushing this in August, and the public hasn't seen, is it a revised project? Do we have these things in writing that, again, if they vote on it, the state's going to have the 13 million that they already, these are some big questions. And to actually start promoting it, so people, when they show up to the public hearing, can actually speak on what we're actually going to maybe have on a referendum. So I have to admit, seems very rushed. I'm for the project, but will the public actually have what will potentially be on a referendum?
So we are prepared to do everything we can to publicize this to the general public and get as many people engaged. The money is committed through OPM, but it is not allocated. So the good news...
Have that in writing.
Yes, I have an email from Representative Arnone from last week because I asked him to check on it. Oftentimes with a failed referendum, OPM will withdraw the funds. Correct. What they did in this case is the funds are still there, and there's a penciled in Enfield, but it's not in pen. So if it passes this time, those funds come to Enfield. If it doesn't pass this time, they will be retracted and given to another community. So a lot of what has to happen is to relook at some of the project specs, which we had a discussion about at that committee meeting, to look at the available funds, and there's two options right now. The no tax impact one is to take it out of and build it in for next year's budget for the fund balance, or to do the entire piece as a bonded funded item. And if that's the case, I did ask the finance office to do a calculation today for the committee, and it's about $100,000 on additional project costs if it was a bonded item for that remaining funds, if those remaining funds stayed in the $2.5 million range, which we're going to have to look at that. So a lot of this will be front-loaded for August 29th, but I do believe that we will have enough information and a presentation ready for the public in advance of that meeting so that they can see it and then comment on it that night.
So have we reached out, have we reaffirmed our bond rating? Have you spoke to the Moody's and Poor's, how that, and we've been hearing from other councilors concerns about debt, that we were close to our bonding limit last year, and that was the concern. So if we're going to completely bond this, these answers people need to understand that, because again, the project got voted down for better, I'm for the project, but the people voted it down. Mm-hmm. And these are questions that we have to be able to answer, and I hope we can do it in 2 weeks.
I think that some of the other issues that are of concern is the fact that in Enfield last year, it appears there were 4 referendum questions, which is a lot.
Bottom line, this one got voted down. So regardless, that's the point. And if you want this on the referendum in November, this has to be detailed. So what happens if they vote for this and we don't get the 13 million? We were prepared for that as well. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to be prepared for in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Sheila, roll call, please. Excuse me, Councilor Mangini, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on this particular referendum item. I believe that part of the reason this referendum item failed is because the referendum was overloaded with too many projects, number one. Secondly, I don't think we marketed it effectively. And thirdly, I think that, I know for a fact, that Enfield would be well served to be a recipient of more funding, and we would benefit from other town views should this pass. We really and truly do need this complex. I'm encouraging that we go forward and that the public understand a little better of why and how this project will be presented. So I think it's up to council and to town staff to make that case very clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Pisner.
4.
Counselor Santinella.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Despard.
4.
Counselor Finger.
4.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
Against.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
That's 9 in favor, 1 against, and no abstentions.
Item K, discussion resolution to accept the proposed amendments to the Enfield Town Code, Chapter 22, Article 2, Enfield Culture and Arts Commission Ordinance. To approve the amendment to Section 22-34B of the ordinance, creating a liaison board member appointed by the Board of Education. And once again, that there is no appointment to the Arts and Culture for this, and they're still reorganizing. However, that is the resolution.
So moved.
Councilor Despard?
Second.
Second, Councilor Santinella. Any discussion on this? Councilor Pisner?
Okay, so we heard tonight that it looks like this commission is just a hot mess. So we have to ask ourselves, I have to ask myself, we have 3 members that are left on it. Before we make any changes to the bylaws, to me, we have to find out what really is going to be expected on this. I mean, what is going to be the yearly budget? How many events are they going to have? I don't understand why we're moving forward with changing something when this commission has literally fallen apart. And to the best of my knowledge, none of them have even gotten an apology for being mistreated, in my opinion. So it's a no from me tonight.
Councilor Ungar?
Okay, I've been talking about this for a while, and I am on this committee as a liaison, and personally, I don't think we need another non-voting member on this committee. I think Councilor Santinella and Jason Neely and I need to meet and have a discussion on how we're going to move forward. And in light of the information that we even learned tonight, that before many of these residents left the group, they voted and they didn't want it. The majority didn't want a Board of Ed liaison appointed to this group. And I did speak with Superintendent Drezig at length, and he said we don't need a Board of Ed liaison to this group. That all we need to do is I can just give them a call and just say, this is what I'd like to do. Would the school be interested in this? And he said, just call me anytime and we'll set up a meeting and discuss it. He said, if you want to, if you have to, it's another meeting that they have to go to, but you don't need it. So Drezig said we don't need it. I don't think we do. The committee itself doesn't want it. So I'm not going to support this.
Councilor Ludwig?
So curious, just, I'd like to hear your side of the story and sort of the beef between the former or current committee members and yourself that seem that the individual came up and talk. Just curious on what sort of the disconnect here is with this committee. And before we do anything else to it, why wouldn't we invite them to a meeting to the council, have it at 6:30, to, a special guest to sort of work this out? So I'm just curious. I want to make sure you have a chance to sort of give your side of the story, because again, they've been pretty clear that they haven't, assuming they've had some issues with some of the things you folks have been kind of going back and forth with. And I've seen some of the emails. And I have to admit, I'm concerned at some of the cost that's being thrown out for murals, first of all, which, I think is, then the question is whether we even, that's a whole nother story, that I don't know if that's part of the beef, but I mean, I think the public needs to understand this. And a lot of these people have served on this committee for a number of years. So I'm just curious, why don't we sort of try to, again, use some kid gloves here and mend some fences?
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, can I interrupt? And if you don't mind,
I asked the question to her. Then you're more than welcome to answer after she.
Okay, that's fine, Mike.
Hold on.
No,
I'm
that's
just
fine.
saying, there's been back and forth. I'm just giving her a chance to. Yeah.
So I think when I started here, I did do a tour of a lot of commissions and looked to see if I could understand pieces of it. I will say that the purpose of this particular commission is to plan, produce, coordinate, or otherwise provide assistance to sponsors of events or activities and to encourage participation therein, which promote or develop the artistic, historic, cultural, and heritage resources of and within the community of Enfield. And when asked how that mission was being fulfilled, there wasn't a lot of data or events, and COVID was obviously a major factor. So we did have some conversations about the appropriate use of taxpayer dollars in terms of the budget, and they did not really agree with some of the ideas that were put forth, and I did not agree that meditation arts or culinary arts was part of a mission. We talked about why Enfield is one of the only communities that doesn't have a summer concert series, or why there appear to be monies from taxpayer funds spent to sponsor other events and things like that, looking for clarification. My other concern was during a very tight budget process that this commission at one point had over $50,000 that had been rolled over year to year, and at this point in time had $30,000 with no plan. Murals was brought up by multiple people, including some newer people on the commission. Murals are a very effective way of creating synergy within a community, within a special area. We have a property owner in Thompsonville who's interested in one, which would be in conjunction with the location of people coming out of the train platform. So there was a conversation about investigating whether that was something that would be appropriate. The $30,000, however, is an issue. It's an issue for you as fiduciary agents of the town, and that from an audit perspective, you're having money that's rolled over year to year and not used, but is being taxed. So I had asked what the plan was. There was no plan. And so one of my suggestions, which you accepted, was to take those funds to reallocate them within the budget process to reduce the burden on something else that wouldn't have to be cut. And I think that that was the right decision that you made. Their budget was maintained at the level that they've had for the past several years. And in addition to that, they kept an additional, I think it was $5,000 and change from their surplus. So we just took a flat amount. They had $35,000 and change. We took 30, they kept 5 in reserve, and they got their full funding for their budget. At this point, it is my understanding that Councilman Santinella and Councilwoman Ungar are actually culling names because there is interest in coming on. The resignations that happened in June were voluntary, and I think for display purposes, and that's okay. Volunteers come and go, but I think when you have this much money tied up into a commission, that there needs to be some level of communication and accountability into what you're doing. We also furnished them with a list of other arts and culture commissions throughout the state that are highly producing in terms of various issues. This commission didn't come close to meeting any of those benchmarks, despite having vast resources compared to the other ones. So we thought that that might be a good exercise for them to look at what some other commissions were doing. They weren't interested in that either. So it's unfortunate that it happened. Obviously, they could reapply. They would be welcomed back, I'm sure, by you. You are the appointing authority. But at this point, there are new people who are interested. I think that there are standards and accountability that need to be set in terms of the financial aspects of it. And there is equipment and other things that have been purchased that are now back into the hands of Jason Neely at the library, as opposed to being kept in private homes, which is something else that I was uncomfortable with in terms of audit procedures.
So just curious, again, so I saw some of the back and forth with, again, talking about zoning regulations on murals, and putting them on private buildings. Talking about accountability, why would we use taxpayer money to do anything on a private building? That should be private money if they want to do it. And honestly, I don't think it's your role to be talking about that zoning change. That's up to planning and zoning if they want to do it.
Well,
frankly. And then I'm sorry, and the other thing, my understanding some of the back and forth with some of the members, someone reached out to a congressperson, and that sort of folks went after that person for reaching out to a congressperson. And I want to apologize to Jen, because I think it's terrible what's going on. I think this is, it feels like we're being heavy-handed on these commissions, in my opinion. And we do need accountability, but I don't know.
Well, I don't think you can have it both ways. You either want accountability or you believe versions of stories that come here tonight that aren't necessarily true.
But these are our residents, and they volunteered for years, and we should give them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, nobody was asked to look up zoning regulations. They were asked to contact muralists and see if there was any interest, and most murals are a combination of a public-private partnership and private
And they're
funds
pretty
are raised.
expensive, too. And you were talking about budget money. I mean, they're not cheap.
Well, when you have $30,000 in your arts and culture,
But
you
again,
can
that's for
find a
us to
mural.
decide, not you. That's for us. We're the Board of Finance.
Well, actually, it was left to the commission.
Excuse me, point of order. Let's move forward here. This is, enough's enough, okay? All right, Councilor Santinello?
Thank you. Look, I never thought that the Cultural Arts Commission would devolve into the January 6th Commission, but I will tell you, I have been in every one of their meetings. This commission was not functioning. The story that you heard here tonight was not even true. It's not even a close representation of what was going on. And Councilor Prisoner, I said this to you before privately, and I'm going to say it to you again. I'm a volunteer. Okay, and I work my butt off, and I know what kind of respect a volunteer deserves. I didn't get it from them, and that has nothing to do with it. We bought a band shell. My very first meeting, we bought a band shell. And I went to the Cultural Arts Commission with great news. We have a band shell. I would love you guys to take ownership of this and program this for the people of Enfield going forward. The response, we don't have the ability to do that. Who's going to do that? We're not doing that. That is not the kind of volunteers that we need. I'm sorry. And I gave Ms. McIntosh an opportunity to hold off until we could reconstitute this commission and give a clear set of expectations of what we wanted from them. How many of you, Councilor Ludwig, Mr. Mayor, Gina, you've been on this council for a while. Tell me how many Cultural Arts Commission events you go to year after year. Can you name one? Can you name one, Mike?
We've done the Opera House Players, and we certainly...
Cultural Arts Commission sponsored event. There's none.
That's
Okay,
not Opera
that's a
House
problem.
Players. All right.
I'm sorry. And there's a massive amount of taxpayer money, not massive, it's $30,000 of taxpayer money that was being hoarded in a bank account. It's not okay. It's not okay. So when you call them on it and make people responsible, that's the reaction I got. I asked for some time so that we could set this set of expectations. And what I got was, we quit. Okay, you quit. Done. And you know what? There's 5 other people who are more than enthusiastic to be on this commission, roll up their sleeves and do things. I am not going to sit here and have what is being said about me floating around this town like I am this ogre. I am holding people to the same level of accountability that I hold myself to in this chair. And if that bothers you guys, I don't really care. It's obnoxious for you to sit there and tell me that I have been disrespectful to them or imply it at all. I think you know me better than that. I'm sorry. So I'm going to tell you, I was going to be prepared to table this tonight to regroup. I'm not. I spoke with Mr. Drezek. I didn't speak with Mr. Drezek. I have spoken with him before. I am aware he wants a Board of Ed liaison. They are more than enthusiastic. I am trying to incorporate and bring people in. The schools have art communities. They have drama communities. They have music communities with kids and parents. We're bringing them into this group to make it more exciting for people of this town. And that's it. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Deputy Mayor Scala.
Thank you. I will be supporting this. I think it's a phenomenal idea. I think it's unfortunate that members quit, and sometimes that happens. I wish it happened a different way, but that it is what it is. I will indicate, though, that my understanding is that Chris Drezek said this was a good idea. And whatever liaison the Board of Education chooses, that person will obviously only volunteer if they have the time to come to those meetings and liaise those meetings. They will be a non-voting member. They don't get to dictate what happens, but they give a direct avenue and a pathway to our schools and the immense talent and the diverse culture that we have there. So I think this is a phenomenal idea, and I will be supporting it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ongare.
I just wanted to say that we have access to all these things without having a Board of Ed liaison member. I think that's adding another chef to the kitchen, and it's going to make things a little more complicated when we're trying to calm things down, smooth things out, regroup. We don't need it. We have access to all those things without it.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to make one comment in regard to this. I'm definitely in favor of it. This Enfield Cultural Arts Commission definitely needs to recharge and reorganize. We do thank the people that have spent, a few years on this commission, and then we will be moving forward with this. And as Deputy Mayor Sakala stated, the Board of Ed will have a liaison, and as Councilor Sakala mentioned, the talent that they have at the high schools, I don't care if it's art, music, whatever, cultural arts is a very important aspect to this town, and we really have to utilize it. So that's my final comment under that, Sheila.
May I make a comment?
Councilor Mangini, then we're going to, after you, then we're going to vote.
Thank you. I'm a little disturbed that I was misinformed that Superintendent Drezek is not in favor when I've learned recently, very recently, that in fact he is in favor of a Board of Ed liaison. So I don't take kindly to not being told the truth, number one. But more importantly, beyond that, I believe that it's important, again, I think it was John Santinella that just mentioned that we try and not only incorporate the Board of Ed, but enhance the opportunities from our community. We have the Halloween events, we have Family Day. There are many, many different events that I think that the schools would and could and should be a part of. And I believe if they had a liaison, they would feel more comfortable participating in this cultural arts endeavor. So again, I will be supporting this, but beyond all that, I'm disturbed that I was not told the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, roll call, please.
Counselor Pisner.
Against.
Counselor Santinella.
For.
Counselor Ungary.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
For.
Mayor Corsati.
For.
Counselor Despard.
For.
Counselor Finger.
For.
Counselor Hopkins.
For.
Counselor Ludwig.
Against.
Counselor Mangini.
Or
That's 7 in favor, 3 against, and no abstentions.
Item L, discussion resolution to amend the Engineering Tech 2 WPC job description. Be it resolved that in accordance with Chapter 7, Section 2 of the Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council does hereby adopt the job description for the following position: the position of Engineering Tech 2 WPC, respectfully submitted Stephen Belinda, Assistant Town Manager, and then there's attachments with also the job description.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor Scala,
Second.
and second, Councilor Despard. Discussion, Doug, Councilor Finger.
If you're going to have the Assistant Town Manager go first with this?
Yes, I am.
Let him
Yeah.
go first and then I'll-
Okay.
I apologize because this was a late-minute addition. I brought it to your attention as soon as I learned about it that morning. And sometimes government is criticized for not acting quick enough or things take too long. Well, I saw there was an opportunity here, so I was aggressive and wanted to put it on the council agenda for today because we are trying to fill a position from an employee, a long-term employee who left to another town, make more money. But he left here back in May. We've been going out to the marketplace trying to recruit someone. We're not getting anyone. We had 2 applicants, and they didn't meet the requirements pursuant to the job description. So when I learned that there's a requirement here that is not even relevant to the actual job, that this responsibility belongs in another union by other employees who have this certification, it shouldn't even be here. I don't know how it was here. I went to his personnel file. When we hired him, he was in the engineering department upstairs. It wasn't even at WPC. Maybe he got it along the way and he used that as leverage to get paid more money. I don't know what happened, but I do trust our water pollution control superintendent who is charged with the responsibility under his license, under federal and state laws, what is best for his facility to make sure it's operating as efficiently as possible. So when he comes to me, I listen, and he says, if we can remove this unnecessary obstacle, this requirement, we could probably get more people that would apply for the job that would then be able to fill his position. He's hurting down there. We have people on workers' comp. We have people that are out, vacant positions. One just left the Glastonbury, more money. I don't want to hobble them any more than necessary, and that's why I think it's important that we need to add these 3 changes to this job description, or remove one and add these 2 other responsibilities and get him what he needs so he can keep this water pollution control facility running. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Greatly appreciate the explanation.
All right.
Councilor Finger.
Thank you. So, Steve, in the back, under experience and training, very last line is hold a state Connecticut WPC Grade 2 certification at time of appointment. That's the one you're talking about that is not required of the job.
That is correct.
Right. And I know the individual who gave that to him. His name is Marvin.
Oh.
But again, on the engineering, on his job title itself, engineering technician 2 / we'll say WPC grade 2. So if you're going to remove the certifications of being a WPC grade 2 requirement, then it should not be included in his title.
You're absolutely right.
So I'm going to make a motion or amendment, I should say, to have that job title WPC grade 2 removed from the job description, but still keeping the engineering technician 2.
Second.
Okay, the motion made by Councilor Finger.
Second by
And seconded by Councilor Hopkins. All in favor? Excuse me?
I think we have to discuss the amendment, right? Which one do we do?
Well,
I think we
all
discussed.
right, let's discuss the amendment before we do that. Okay, discussion on the amendment?
Yes, I have a question.
Councilor Mangini.
Director, to our mayor, to Councilman Finger, how is this amendment going to, or will it affect what our human resource director / assistant town manager is proposing?
It's not going to affect it anyways. This is an old job title from years ago. Back in, I want to say, 2003, maybe perhaps, somewhere around there. If my memory serves me correctly. This is when Marvin Serra was our new superintendent. He ended up changing a lot of job titles, a lot of things that really, he tried to combine a lot of things. So when when the previous person wanted this job title, Marvin made him say, well, you should get your grade 2 license. And it's not required of this job. That job, I know for a fact, which is one thing that nobody brought up is now that they're adding a grease trap and grease interceptors inspections. That we used to have a part-time person, if you remember correctly. I think the council approved a part-time position last year or the year before, where this one individual worked part-time and he did a lot of grease trap inspections. So that person no longer works for the town, and this right here will incorporate that position, and it's still the same money. So they're getting this job title is getting more work. I won't say too loud, but less same money. So I think, am I right on that, Steve?
You're spot on.
Yeah, usually I'm with DPW.
So if that's the case, what are we voting on?
We're going to be voting, we first have to vote on the amendment.
Right.
Then after we vote on the amendment, then we are going to discuss the resolution as amended and then vote on that.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
All right.
All right,
You're welcome, Cindy.
A little confusing, but we'll get it through. All right, so is there any other discussion on the amendment? And we will vote on the amendment now. Okay?
Mr. Mayor, can I
Now,
just, for point of-
excuse me, does that have to be a roll call or just a hand vote? just a hand vote, okay?
For point of clarity, are we going to strike out grade 2 in the title? Is that the only thing we're striking out?
Yes.
Okay. I want to make
Yes.
sure.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. 10 in favor of the amendment passing 10-0. All right, now we will have a discussion on the resolution as amended. Yes. Any discussion? Okay, Councilor Pisner.
I know. Steve, thank you, because you did get me that information that I asked for, because I did talk to Steve about this, and my concern was, and again, it was because it had that grade 2 in there, was when they would get certified. I didn't realize until you just explained that it doesn't need to be there. But my only other concern is I want to make sure the salaries stay fair with this, so that if somebody did have that certification, they would be compensated for it.
I can address that.
Mr.
Fortunately,
Belinda?
in this contract, I have the base salary, which we advertise at, and then I have a 5% wiggle room, higher or lower, and that's based on qualifications. So if someone were to come forward and have more than the incumbent had, or more than we need, I have the luxury of going up to 5% in that. So I have parameters, which is good.
All right, thank you. Is there any other discussion on the resolution as amended? Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Pisner.
Yes.
Counselor Santinella.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crissati.
4.
Counselor Despard.
4.
Counselor Finger.
4.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Okay, item 12, is there any other business? 13, public communications. Any person to wish to speak in front of us? Come on down. And then 3 minutes.
I get 3?
3 minutes.
I don't need that.
For you, 3 minutes.
3 minutes, George.
George Young, 8 Holly Lane. I know you're tired, because I know I am, and I've been up since 6 this morning to go play golf, so I'm really tired. But anyway, in the public communication portion of the program, please clarify who can speak. It was my understanding that the council was good enough to allow the residents of Enfield to speak. I was surprised that a non-resident attorney that was hired by the BAA was allowed to express her opinions during that time regarding hire of an attorney for investigation or review at the July 6th meeting. I believe it was, yes, July. One last thought. I know that the mayor asked before we speak to keep personalities, etc., out of it, and we should do so. I'd like to add to that thought. When someone from the audience is coming to speak, as I saw and heard at the last meeting, the first meeting of July, no counselor should say, "This guy is trouble," or any words to that effect before the person speaks. Remember, as you forget to turn your mic on to speak, you sometimes forget to turn it off, or your neighbor's mic is on when you speak to one another. Due respect, thank you.
Thank you, George. Is there anybody else? Mr. Riley?
So apparently I misspoke. And if I make a mistake, I will come up and address it. There was conversations between my attorney and the town attorney and the basement town attorney, who's, I forget their names. Attorney Salado. Yes. So there were discussions between them to set up something, but still kind of surprised today that fences showed up and I still haven't had a walk around. I did get a certified letter from that company out of Norwich, but apparently I misspoke on that, and I apologize that I did. A little confusing for me, but I would still like the courtesy of understanding what will be happening and have a little time to discuss what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. I mean, I've been here now, this is the second time. You probably don't want to see me for a third. But let me understand what's going on. I mean, I had guys sitting today waiting because you were parked in the right-of-way to take the fences. You weren't. Got to watch what I say now. You weren't, but that company was parked in the driveway, and I had guys that had to wait. I want to do windows. Am I going to be able to do windows? Am I going to be able to get in there? What happens if somebody gets hurt on my property? I mean, that's a concern you would have. I mean, if the road was out in front of your house and people started walking through your backyard across, you would have a concern. I don't want people just, and at that number, you guys have seen the people that walk down there from coming back from Coronas or coming back from the soup kitchen or coming from the lake if they live over on that side. It really saves you a lot of time. So I think it needs to be addressed in some way. And now they've ripped down the fence, so I guess they addressed it. It's your fence, not mine, but your fence is ripped down onto my property. So, Bob, why don't you come over and see me? You want to set a date now? After. All right, good. Thanks for your time.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So through you to Mr. Riley, when the assistant town manager and I were at your property a couple of weeks ago, I did give you my business card. Do you still have it?
Oh, yeah, I have several of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it a few times. You were there a couple of weeks ago?
This can be
2 weeks,
addressed after
couple
the
weeks ago.
meeting.
So
Come on.
When you two came over?
Yeah.
That was
All right.
that was like a month ago.
So,
So you can address them after
half
the
ago.
meeting. This is public
Yeah.
communications.
Okay.
but just so you know,
I'll get another one from you. How's that?
operational issues should come to my office. I know that Councilman Santinella and others have been on the phone with you, but we could have
Yeah.
solved a lot of your problems
Again, point
today.
of order here.
Time is up, Mr. Riley.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Is there anybody else? Yep.
All right. Gary Young, Still Abbey Road. Second topic relating to the vehicle property taxes. My argument against raising the mill rates is supported by the concern of our vehicle taxes impacted. The concept of needing to find money is an argument that just didn't sit well with me, as I could clearly find money with all the unpaid property taxes on the website, specifically relating to unpaid vehicle taxes. I think Senator Santinella mentioned this. I have a neighbor, for example, that owes more than $6,000 in vehicle taxes and somehow has new vehicles every couple of years and a registration that seems to be renewed without any unpaid taxes. I get my tax bill and know that for me to renew my registration, the taxes need to be current. I received my bill, called the town relating to the amount of the bill, and was told politely that I would need to pay my bill and then wait until August to dispute the amount. To me, that seemed very backwards, honestly. Why would I have to wait and pay more money than I need to in the first place? In addition, I am not sure how the value is even factored. I was told that the values are factored by NADA specifically. If that is in fact true, then I would know. Then I would like to know if you're truly using the VIN dealer option that you need to pay for to use. I can tell you firsthand I cannot use the VIN number on my vehicle, so I needed to select my vehicle in the options. When I did my valuation and printed my details, which was done on July 8th, the day after I spoke to the tax office, now based on the used vehicle market and every dealer you speak to, the $3,000 difference. There's a $3,000 difference between what I was taxed and what my actual valuation is. This equates to a potential $110 overpayment. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but ironically, it would pay the registration that's also due this year. The valuations are also based on conditions of vehicles aside from the features. If you're using the VIN, that solves the feature part. It does not solve for the condition of the vehicle. More importantly, selecting a trade value or private party sale. It makes sense to me that once the valuations are determined, residents would be notified right away in October so they can dispute as needed, not well after the fact, and now the town expects you to pay more money than needed potentially just to try to get it refunded later. Now on to the process specifically. As a resident, it appeared I needed to call into the assessor's office, speak to somebody, learn of the process, which was not clearly identified, and nor she could properly give the timeline and process. I then went to the town website to go to the board assessment section. There is no process defined on that page or within a document. There is a motor vehicle appeal form that you need to open. It does not clearly define a process either. In addition to that, it does not give you a link to the actual document itself to fill out for the review process. It just brings you to the general page. Why is it continuously difficult for residents to find information without spending all this time? The assessors and revenue collection team specifically has 6 employees based on your page. Maybe during the next team meeting, you could ask yourself as a team, what are the most common questions we are going to get, and how can we help our residents get those answers quickly so this way we can be proactive rather than reactive? Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else?
I feel like I'm on trial. My name is Felix Ruiz Jr. I am the ASME 1029 president, and I am just here, nervous as my voice is shaking. Don't know why. To say thank you for your support. I understand. Thank you for your support for voting in favor of the contract. It was a hard-fought contract with Steve. We threw down a few times in the office. Ellen can vouch for it. But thank you very much, and that's all I have to say. Have a good night.
Hey, just to let you know, I was going to say no.
Is there any counselor communications?
Just very
Counselor
briefly.
Hopkins?
Thank you, Attorney. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Young, I did want to say I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Why can people who aren't residents of the town speak? I think we run into some First Amendment issues if we limit that. I think that it's my opinion personally that there's some case law on that, but I think it's a reasonable question. Secondly, I want to help you with finding the prior PAR reports. I'll follow up with you after the meeting.
Counselor Pisner.
Okay, the one thing we left out was a thank you to all our first responders and especially our police who put on the National Night Out last week. I had the pleasure of doing temporary tattoos, and I did them on old and young. Everybody had fun. It was just a great night. It was a great family night, and I, again, just want to thank the officers for all they do, all our first responders. They really do make our town great. So I did not want to forget them tonight.
Okay, one final comment that I will make. It's good to see the Young and Young duo here tonight. I will be in contact with both of you also, and to discuss.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I, second. Second. Councilor Finger. All in favor? Aye. 10 in favor. Meeting is adjourned, and have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.